Jordan's giving us some smooth beats today. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Tip-Off. Happy Monday. This is the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 6-game NBA slate and 5-game MLB slate. We've got Eric Lindquist today, Chris Spags. Fellas, how's our Monday going so far?
I'm good. I'm now at the midway point of my journey today where I am setting an Awesemo record because I can't get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame with winning in DFS tournaments. So instead, I'm going to do it my own way by doing 4 shows in a day. So you guys are the second to last stop of my journey. I guess I close it out with Greg Ehrenberg, and I'm excited because the Tip-Off is a show that always gives me that second wind. And I know today with you, Kayla, and with Eric here, you guys are the wind beneath my wings and nothing else.
Easy, Frank Sinatra.
I'm going to be very flatline then. I'm just going to come in. I'm going to undercut you by being very monotone and just relaxed, mainly because I'm not looking forward to tomorrow because I have a bet that I have to pay up to one Greg Ehrenberg, and it is not something that I am excited about.
Tell us about it really quickly.
No, I think I'll pass. Well, okay, fine. Friday. So Friday, I did this genius thing called, I don't know on what planet I decided, Kelly Olynyk versus Anthony Davis straight up. But if you look at Kelly Olynyk's rates on the year, I was so convinced on Friday that he was going to outperform Anthony Davis, and he played awesome. We did it with Yahoo scoring, 54.2 for Kelly O. It was fantastic. Anthony Davis beat him by just over 1.5, I believe. It was a narrow win for Greg, but a win nonetheless. And I have a bit that I'm forced to do tomorrow at his choosing, and it has already been set and it is ready to go. So tune in tomorrow.
Better believe we will all be there.
Batter believe? Was that a Freudian slip?
Better believe?
Oh, better believe. I thought you said batter for a second. Maybe I'm also not hearing things correctly. And
Better
you don't read
believe.
things correctly, so I guess it evens out, correct?
It's a toss-up. Who knows?
Piqued my interest, personally.
Eric, boy, we are off to a sassy start today.
Good morning.
Hey, all of you out there, don't forget to hit that like button. Do it right now. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. Really quickly, we want to talk about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. With over 500 player props offerings, No House Advantage is the largest provider of player props in the industry. And the best part is that you'll receive a $20 first match deposit bonus today with promo code Awesemo. Beat your friends, not the house. Download the app in the App Store and win big with player props today. Woo! Let's get into our bad beats. Last night, Eric was losing it on Twitter, if you didn't catch that. Last night, disaster struck in a number of ways as a super popular Mo Bamba was a disaster. Najee Marshall disappointed for the second straight outing as chalk, and Luka Doncic was ejected at the start of the second half to ruin any and all lineups he came into contact with. How did you two fare with all of the landmines that were out there last night? Eric, let's start with you.
Not well. I did not do well. It was unfun. I know unfun is not a word. It was not fun. How about that? But I love saying unfun. It just sounds correct to me.
I like that.
Therefore, we're going to go with it. Eric's grammatical school, don't attend it. It doesn't go well for Kayla either. No. I screwed that up for her. I'm done. I'm done with the joking bit on that because this is not a joke. Luka Doncic, don't hit people in the nuts when I have 75% of you. Don't do that. Colin Sexton's a nice guy. He's from Alabama. He's from the South. He's a nice southerly gentleman. You don't have to hit him. Arkansas. But same thing. I mean, I just couldn't believe that he did that. And yeah, that was very hurtful. That was the end of that. A lot of Mo Bamba. That didn't go well. Overall, yesterday was probably the worst day of DFS in forever after a little mini heater last week.
Yeah, I'm on the same page here where I mentioned I've been left to my own devices this weekend with my girlfriend, getting our first weekend separately from each other in about 15 months or so, 16 months. I don't even know what it is at this point. More than enough time though. And while I was drowning, I would say my sorrows was drowning my life in the day off in food and having some nice alcohol. I had a bottle of champagne to myself, having a good time, ready to play some NBA DFS. And yes, Mo Bamba and Luka Doncic, two men who absolutely murdered me yesterday. And I'm not happiest about it. I feel like Sunday DFS, there's a reason I stay away normally during the season, and I would like to say it's for my own mental health, but I'm going to say it's because of things like that happening only on Sundays. And today's slate does seem like we'll have, I got to get back up to bat. That's all you can do as a person who does play DFS and make the sports bets that we make here on the shows. But yesterday, definitely, I think there were some ways to play it that might have gone better, and I was on none of them.
I have a lot of questions about this, 15-month no weekends away from your
It's a pandemic. We were at home. So it's chill on 3L saying Spags or his girl or clingy LMA. To be clear, no, I am not clingy. In fact, I would love for her to go do things, but we've been playing it the way you're supposed to, not going too crazy. And she'll leave for a day or something, but for nights and all of that, definitely the first nights apart. So sorry to chill 3LS. No, doesn't believe in love, but God, some of us there, as you can tell from watching my content, I am a known romantic.
Eric, have you and Melanie been apart at all in the last 15 months?
Yeah, fortunately, she's from Pasadena area, so she lives 20 minutes from here. So when we need to have our own space, I'll go golf. She'll spend the weekend at her mom's place. So works out pretty well for me, I would say. Get to have some boy time, and by boy time, I mean just myself sitting on a couch eating Chipotle. So that's basically, that was my pandemic. How was yours?
Looked a lot like the same.
Yeah,
all right, sitting alone on my couch eating Chipotle. Let's dive into our NBA news. Kevin Love, Darius Garland, Cedi Osman, and Isaiah Hartenstein are all out for Cleveland this evening, creating a ton of value that should help us roster all of the studs on this slate. Spags, which Cavs pieces will you be targeting the most tonight?
So it seems like Dean Wade's the one that's going to be very difficult to avoid because you are taking away. Dean Wade picked up the start yesterday with Cedi Osman out, and you're going to pick up the start and more opportunity with no Kevin Love as well. And it sucks because I think there's a lot of things that point to Dean Wade. I was really trying to run through NBA Wowie and find some configuration of Dean Wade with guys off the court that made him actually look like a good fantasy player. And he just hasn't been above a fantasy point per minute, no matter how many guys you take off the court amidst all these players are going to be out today. So that gives me some concern that it does seem like he tops out at about 0.8 fantasy points per minute. That said, he should be playing into the mid 30s a minutes, you would think. Awesemo has been that same range, and I feel like that's what you have to trust. So Colin Sexton, to me, the tournament play, a guy on Fanduel is going to look very appealing at that price point. But on DraftKings, I think you're going to be playing Dean Wade. And my one hope that I mentioned, Eric, before the show is I'm kind of hoping Colin Sexton just sits here. I'm actually very much hoping that's the case because Jeremiah Martin's the guy that I'm intrigued by. I want to see get some run here in this home stretch of games that mean nothing for the Cavs. People who played DFS in the last couple seasons may remember a run he had for Brooklyn, and he is a guy who projects to be getting some minutes today. But I do think he's a guy you can only play if Sexton's out, or only play meaningfully if Sexton is out. In this spot, you have enough guys who are out already, so Sexton should play, and I think that means that Dean Wade's going to be the guy who stands out the most.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of a product of the slate too. So going to Dean Wade on DraftKings, I mean, we basically have an $11,000 player in Russell Westbrook that's for me, just a shoe in every single lineup. I'm gonna give him the Luka Doncic treatment that I gave him yesterday. Minimum 75% of lineups. Hopefully goes a little bit better, but Dean Wade's 3,400. I mean, I hope we get other value that we can pair alongside him and maybe kind of reduce that ownership, because that's a hefty number to be paying for a guy who averages on the year 0.72 Fanduel or DraftKings points per minute, 3,400 for him over on DK. It's just, there's so many studs we want to pay up for. So having him, if you want to take some shots on Broderick Thomas, 3,200, that's another path that you can kind of go to. Jeremiah Martin, we talked about a little bit beforehand. Yeah, that's a beautiful spot to be looking at. If you get, like, I would hope that at some point, like, Colin Sexton is just going to get all of the usage here. And so, I mean, as long as he's good to go and play here, I don't see a way around having a lot of exposure to him too. It's just such a smash spot. And Indiana playing at one of the fastest paces over the last 2 months here. I believe number 2 in the league. That's just a ridiculous pace that they've been at. Playing a lot of games against Washington helps that pace statistic as well. But I got to think that this is going to be a great spot for Cleveland.
Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson are out, and Steven Adams is doubtful once again. Eric, who will you be relying on the most from the Pelicans on the second half of their back-to-back tonight?
So the winner on the $20 yesterday on DraftKings had a very fascinating thing where they had both Hernangomez and Hayes in the winning lineup. They were both cheap enough, I think, where it wasn't the craziest thing. Probably don't want to get in the habit of doing that, but I guess you really only need to have it work out one time to hit 100K, and therefore that worked out pretty well. I'm sure enough of the field probably did that if they were just crunching lineups, because both of them are just still too cheap on DraftKings for their assumed roles. Jackson Hayes, back-to-back 24 minutes, playing with a bunch of usage too, 31.3% usage, 19.3% usage. Yeah, 24 minutes and 26 minutes there against Charlotte. Came in and played really well and ended up closing out that game, which is pretty tilting because I needed one more rebound out of Hernangomez to get the double-double. That would have really gone a long way for me yesterday. But between Hayes and him, I think you can definitely take shots on both. Hayes is definitely the priority on DraftKings at $1,200 less, but don't forget about Hernangomez. I still think there is some viability to that price over there. And then on DraftKings and FanDuel both, James Johnson, 4,600 on DK, sitting at 4,400 over on FanDuel. Just kind of another product of this slate right now where we know that he's going to get a bunch of run. It is the second half of a back-to-back. And so I think those minutes maybe come down a slight tick, but it's hard not to love James Johnson again today. And Eric Bledsoe, I was on heavy yesterday. I'm not sure what I feel about him yet. I'll see what that ownership comes in at as we get closer to lock, because it is only a 6-game slate. Yesterday was 7, but we've had some of these bigger slates. Like, ownership is going to get condensed. So don't freak out a lot when you see 40-45% on some of these plays like Russ Westbrook, Dean Wade, assuming that a guy like Sexton might jump up a little bit here too closer to lock. But ownership is going to get more condensed. So if you can find ways to get off of those kind of plays, you're basically still playing somebody who's going to be 10% owned. So the pivots aren't necessarily as important today.
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys that Eric mentioned are guys that are going to be important for me today. I'm willing to go back to Willie Hernangomez and Jackson Hayes, though I would still prefer to go separately. Yesterday I didn't put a rule where it was max one of them on Fantasy Cruncher, and ended up getting them together in a couple lineups, and that ended up being a better approach than it would have seemed because both guys outscored Mo Bamba. So that was sort of the reason that worked yesterday. But I would agree that's probably not something that's most likely to work today. So I don't think it'd be the craziest thing in the world to make that a max one situation amongst the bigs, because both guys do get a big uptick in both rebounding upside and usage. Willie Hernangomez actually starts to assist the ball a little bit more above a 10% rate. So that's something that's noteworthy too. They just are much better players who kind of soak up a lot of that Ingram and Zion usage just left behind. But Eric Bledsoe to me is the decision point you have to make today, where James Johnson, I agree, is going to get the run. I think is a little bit of a risk if he ends up as chalky as he was yesterday with that price tag on the rise. But Eric Bledsoe, we saw a 50 fantasy point upside, and a lot of that was him and Terry Rozier kind of going head to head in a way where there's reading between the lines here, not normally what we do on the DFS and sports betting side of things, where it's all about the data, but maybe those guys don't like each other very much. Might be my guess, dating back to the Boston days where Terry Rozier and Bledsoe went head to head in the playoffs. I do think though Bledsoe's usage should hold. I don't know if he's got that 50 fantasy point upside, but we've seen him put up a bunch of shots the last 2 games as this roster started to thin out. So I think you can go to Bledsoe today, but like Eric mentioned, the ownership, if that goes up, I think a chalk Bledsoe is certainly something I don't mind moving away from, but I think there's enough guys who are going to benefit. And the one that I think doesn't benefit as much as it may seem is Lonzo Ball. It hasn't been the big upside there. He's deferring a lot to everybody else on the team. I don't know what the logic is behind it, but certainly a tournament play you can get some of, but I think a guy that these other guys, you make a case for them to be core plays. Lonzo, I don't think you can.
Bradley Beal is out tonight for the Wizards with Wizard. I did it again. Wizards. Eric wasn't there on Friday. I said Wizards.
I heard from the void. I heard.
All right. Bradley Beal is out again tonight for the Wizards, which opens up tons of opportunity for more than just walking triple-double Russell Westbrook. Spags, what other Wizards should you be targeting in their matchup versus the Hawks? Jeez.
I think out of the Wizards that I know, I would say Davis Bertans is certainly one who can whiz with the best of them. And I would say in this spot should get a little more usage. I think Ish Smith is the one that earlier in the day we had being a chalk play, and I think that's probably not going to hold. But one of he or Raul Neto should see an upside, or a little bit more of an upside here, just in terms of the minutes, whether they have the production or not. I think is sort of going to be up to Russell Westbrook's whims and all that. And I think too, Rui Hachimura, you could sort of make the case for the price tag is down a little bit. He has seen some days where he's been more aggressive looking for a shot when Beal's been out, but I don't really have a strong confidence in any of these guys. Like I'll get a mix of all of them at some percentage levels, I think relative to the field, but I don't know that there's one that I'm like, this guy is definitely going to go off here. When Ish was looking like chalk, I definitely didn't feel like, oh yeah, that's the guy who's going to get all the minutes here. There just isn't a clear pathway, I think, to any of these guys getting meaningful run. Like they're all going to get a little bit more run, but does anybody become even a 30 fantasy point guy? I don't think so. I don't have a single guy besides Russ projected over 25 fantasy points right now with the minutes run that Awesemo is projecting currently. So I think Russell Westbrook's clearly the one who's going to benefit here. Obviously, the rates for him are going to take big jumps upwards. He has about a 52% assist rate. The usage goes up to just shy of 35%. All those things look good for Westbrook, but he's been owned every day with Beal playing. So imagine his ownership today on a day where you don't have Beal playing. That's my concern here, where if you play 100% Russ, I wouldn't blame you. But I think to me, capping it at 50% and trying to figure out other Wizards or other plays or other Wizards out there who can give you the upside might be the move, just to get away from Russ for some portion of your lineups.
Kayla, you're the best. Anyway, Russell Westbrook, definitely kind of the de facto guy that you want from this team. I think that's pretty clear cut and obvious. Thank you, Fanduel, for making an attempt at making it something to think about with 12,400, but 11K on DK. I see no way around him today. It's just kind of a de facto plug and play for me. Getting to the rest of this team, I was kind of expecting ownership to be a little bit higher on some of these pieces. Davis Bertans would be like the guy if I had to pick somebody at power forward, but I am very, very nervous about his usage. Played 35 and 34 minutes. We know him to kind of be a flamethrower. He basically only shoots threes. He's had in his last two games here, 35 and 34 minutes, which is great, but he's only had one shot that wasn't a three-pointer there. So we're basically banking on him on DraftKings to knock down 4, 5, 6 threes to be able to pay off at 3,700. And that's kind of it, because he won't do anything else. Not a great rebounder, not going to be somebody involved passing the ball, getting any assists. That's all funneling through Russ. Ish Smith, I really kind of want to stay away from if he's going to be any kind of popular. Right now, coming in around 13% over on DK. That's definitely going to be a no for me as well. It's just really hard to get to any of these other pieces. And also, I will say in the whole overall context of the slate from a macro level, we have a lot of news that'll be waiting in that late night spot. Like I think with Houston, we could be waiting on Kellyo and Christian Wood here for quite a while. We don't have any word yet. Maybe we get that before lock, but in the event that it comes in after lock, I don't know if I want to be tying up a bunch of my players to the 7:30 p.m. Eastern time games. So I'll be light on Washington probably, except for Russell Westbrook, who I will have tons of.
The Rockets are 15-point underdogs in Portland tonight, but could once again provide a bunch of value depending on how Kelly Olynyk and Christian Wood injury news shakes out, as Eric just alluded to. So Eric, how are you handling this team on tonight's slate in the event that they are active or inactive?
Maybe I should read my own run sheet. That might be a great idea sometimes, as opposed to just being a dunce. But, whatever. Such is life. Here we are. Christian Wood or Kelly Olynyk would both be very intriguing options to have. So we have a number of spend ups on this slate. Domantas Sabonis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Russell Westbrook, who we talked about, Steph Curry. There's so many guys to be paying up for. And we don't have like a ton of underneath 4K value outside of Cleveland, which feels very thin, outside of Washington, which also feels very thin. So there is, I think, a case to kind of making a featured piece. If you get one or the other in, I would be very excited to be rostering either Christian Wood or Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk, we've talked about at length here the last couple tip-offs. I know Spags for sure has, and for me, it's just been like he's a completely different dude here in Houston. He's been the one bright spot on this team, right around 1.3 DraftKings points per minute with Wood off the floor. I mean, it's just kind of a ridiculous amount of production that he's putting up. He's producing like a 10K stud, and you're getting a discount on that. I mean, his price tag had been up to the 9K range, which just looked weird on FanDuel, but now he's 8,100. He's the highest price center, but coming in with virtually no ownership. So if that news comes out late, you could be getting a really low owned piece. And the same thing applies to Christian Wood. Now, Christian Wood would also be a great play at 8,500 on FanDuel, but looking at Kenyon Martin Jr. as well, I think regardless of what happens, he's got to be somebody that you have interest in, producing at a very high rate. They're basically undersized as it is. Kelly Olynyk would be playing the 5, or Wood would be playing the 5. The only event that I wouldn't have any interest in this team for the most part is if you get both of them in, which I find unlikely.
Yeah, I think if you get both these guys in, I would agree that Kenyon Martin Jr. is going to look on the cusp of playable. DJ Augustine, I think, close to playable. I still wouldn't mind taking flyers on Kelly Olynyk, but the pathway here to Olynyk being good, like I was really beating the drum of on Friday, which Eric then carried that torch for me on the Live Before Lock as well, was that Olynyk is just a different player overall this year, but he's going to be an even better play in court time without Christian Wood because there's just more rebounds to go around. But really on his own, Olynyk has just been assisting at a higher level, getting more rebounds, getting more usage, really in particular. The usage and assists are major parts of what he's doing here, where I don't mind taking tournament flyers on Olynyk if you get Wood in. But if Wood is out, I think Olynyk is once again one of the better plays on the slate, just too cheap for this situation that we've seen now enough times. And there are more bodies here, but there isn't still another big man who can come in. And I think in this spot against Portland, where you do have 2 big men, you're probably going to want to have somebody in there. You can't really get away with a lot of court time of having KJ Martin at center or Jayshawn Tate at center. These guys are not meant to be long-term centers. So watching to get both these guys in is going to be, or if both guys get in, I think is an important part of it. And yeah, just play Olynyk again. And I agree, really, the main thing that Eric said that I think is important, and he always talks about it with late swap, but make sure you do keep some sort of roster flexibility there, because this is a spot against Portland where Portland is a very bad team. And if you get either one or both these guys out, whatever is left behind is going to be a lot more appealing. And we just don't know that's going to be the case yet.
All right. We now head into our one-on-one segment. But before we do, something that caught my eye in the chat that has literally nothing to do with what we're talking about. Guys, were you team Hollywood Video or team Blockbuster?
I would say more team Blockbuster. We did go to Hollywood Video locally, but Blockbuster I certainly hold in more affinity. So I would say team Blockbuster.
Blockbuster had a wider array of SNES video games for my gaming enjoyment, and therefore I frequented that place as opposed to Hollywood Video, which was purely the spot that you went if you tried to sneak an adult film without getting in trouble, because they had a cooler clerk there in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So didn't go very well. Didn't end up getting a chance to be able to do that. But Blockbuster Video, definitely more of the family-friendly, lovely gaming for my Mortal Kombat enjoyment. I think I rented that like 48 times because I could go there after school, not have my parents around, and rent it, go play it in the basement, not get in trouble. Good times were had by all.
Over under being a Hollywood Video guy is the least surprising thing I've ever seen. It's just whenever there are more things to find out about over under, you find.
What's the contrarian stance? I'm taking that. What's the contrarian? What's the 0.1% owned video store? I'm taking it.
My town had a movie gallery. Was that just like a local thing, or was that a nationwide thing?
Like a movie gallery?
Because they don't believe in art.
No.
Did you grow up in the Footloose town? I'm pretty sure, Kayla, because I know you moved to LA and you're a ballet dancer, correct? Were you once upon a time? Yes.
I was a ballet dancer for 15 years of my life. Yes.
Yeah. Was Kevin Bacon your first boyfriend?
Ren.
Okay. Just saying. The preacher daughter. I'm just saying.
Footloose is a great movie. No, Movie Gallery was just the name of our movie rental place. That's just what it was.
Oh, got it. Movie Gallery, the name of it. I thought you literally meant like a movie theater gallery.
I was just being a dick. I knew she meant it was a chain, and then people in the chat are saying, I just never heard of it because I grew up in New York, so I don't know.
Well, was that just like a Midwest local thing, or was that?
I would guess.
Have you guys heard of those or no? Okay, well.
Movie Gallery is like the fake name that a TV show would have to use to not get copyrighted. Like that's exactly what it is. Welcome
to Southwest Missouri. All right. Missouri.
Oh, sorry.
Sound like my grandparents.
Doing a thing. Sorry.
All right. In these battles between stars, which player would you rather have an NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? Westbrook is in a tier of his own tonight, but 2 power forwards in Giannis and Domantas Sabonis also stand out as incredible pay-up options on both sites. Which of these 2 studs do you prefer in your lineups tonight, Giannis or Sabonis? Spags?
Sabonis to me is a guy that I would just not want to go to if you get Malcolm Brogdon in. So this is one that I need the injury news on to have some degree of confidence. So I think that's a spot right now where Brogdon is questionable. So the assumption currently would be that he can play. So I think if that goes the other way, we get him ruled out again, Sabonis would pull ahead. But I think right now, Giannis is going to be the play that I would have the most confidence in. I certainly would rather pay up for Westbrook, but I do think in last where I don't get there from a salary price point, like Steph Curry is the most direct pivot, but I do think spending that money elsewhere, going to Giannis is a play that I'll probably have in some portion of lineups. The minutes I would hope will continue to be there. They've been playing him regularly, it seems so far. So that would be the expectation there. But I think Sabonis right now, not a play if Brogdon is in, and I wouldn't consider otherwise other than Giannis until we get that news.
So in the last 2 weeks, do you want to guess at what Sabonis's fantasy points per minute are? With Brogdon off the floor? 1.6 on the number. That's fantastic. He's also seeing 8 more minutes per game. And part of that has to do with OT. So I'm not going to mince at that. He's had 2 OT games in that span, but 1.6 up to next to Giannis is 1.7, and generally going to be guaranteed to be playing 5-6 more minutes. I think it's closer than you'd probably think it would be. And I think Giannis is coming in with a little bit more ownership. If that were to continue, and again, Giannis is my favorite guy to be over the field on just about every single slate because he is the best fantasy point per minute producer on the planet. But if I'm going to get half the ownership on Sabonis in his current role and you get Brogdon out, I think it is much closer than what the field has it pegged at. And so I'm probably going to be going to the Sabonis side over on DraftKings.
Okay. The Pelican centers have been awfully good filling in for Adams, as Guillermo Hernangomez and Jackson Hayes have each made appearances in winning lineups of late. Did I say that right?
You did. Oh my God.
Thank you. I don't know why Jordan's laughing.
I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. It's because you're being very careful. You're treading lightly, like you're going through a minefield, as if I've written something just to trick you up. Spags thinks I trick him up with props. You think I trick you up with vernacular. It is what it is. That's why I'm laughing too. I'm just not showing it.
Eric scheming behind the scenes. All right.
Awesemo will be mine.
Eric, which play do you prefer in this battle of teammates? Hernangomez or Hayes, Eric?
Definitely going to probably be going to the Hayes route over on DraftKings. On Fanduel, I find it to be an interesting question because Hayes is up to 5,600 at power forward over there. And then Hernangomez is 5,800, but he has to be played over at a center spot. I think, looking up and down these center options, I know that there's not the big stud to be paying up for, but now you get Jared Allen at 6,800. Rudy Gobert, I'm in love with tonight, 7,900. Oh, crap. That's also next on the run sheet. Whatever. Clint Capella, 7,700. There's just so many great spots on this top end that I think you're going to see one of them pop for 45 plus. I think I'm going to probably be on Hayes as well over on FanDuel, although I won't get a ton of exposure at that inflated price tag. But on DK, give me the discount. Basically been splitting minutes there at center, but Hernangomez, don't sleep on him either. But I'm curious where that ownership is going to come in at. It's going to change wildly between now and the end of this slate because there's so much news that we have to get between Brogdon, between Wood and Olynyk, between all of these guys that we're not really sure how some of this ownership is going to pan out, but it's going to fluctuate much more heavily because there are only 6 games today.
Yeah, I would say the thing with Willy Hernangomez that is something we talk about, in terms of motivation and all of that, where generally teams wanting to play younger guys for the most part. Generally teams are wanting to play guys who they've invested draft capital in. And that's one thing that's going against Willy Hernangomez, that Jackson Hayes keeps getting extended minutes. If he's playing anything approximating well, he's going to take minutes directly away from Willy Hernangomez. So that to me is something that I would have some degree of concern for. I think Hernangomez projects right now to me to have higher raw points right now for fantasy, also better points, fantasy points per minute. I have him at 1.2 compared to 1.14 for Jackson Hayes. But the motivation part is big, where if they want to give Jackson Hayes more run and he's been playing well and coming through deserving it, both guys get pretty big rate increases, as we talked earlier in the show. So I think you have to err a little more on the side of Jackson Hayes. But to me, Willy Hernangomez is the most direct pivot. And if Hayes gets in foul trouble, which is not crazy against Memphis, you can see Hernangomez have more minutes and just go off at much less ownership.
Rudy Gobert draws a fantastic matchup against the soft interior of the Warriors, while Jonas Valanciunas has put up some massive fantasy outings of late as his minutes have trended up. Spags, which big man do you prefer on tonight's slate, Gobert or J-Val?
neither guy is one that I'm, dying to get to necessarily. And I know Eric having some signs of love here for Rudy Gobert. I'll be intrigued to hear his thoughts because I think there is definitely a case to be made for them going against Golden State and a Golden State team that should actually be able to keep in the game. So that should increase Gobert's court time. But neither one to me is grading out that well. I think there's a sort of an argument to be made to go to Jonas Valanciunas because you're playing a less effective Pelicans team who's going to miss more shots. And those are the situations there that Jonas can have the higher upside and get more offensive rebounds. Be really padding those defensive rebound stats. Certainly one way he's had the ceiling in the past. But I think you have to err on the side of Gobert just because of the fact that he's going to be playing this competitive game against a team that doesn't have a real center. And I think they're probably not going to play him off the floor like they used to with Rudy Gobert, where this team is not as good at screening and all of that stuff and getting guys to pick and pop in a way that's going to get Gobert off the floor. Utah needs him to be playing. So I think I would err on the side of Gobert, but both guys certainly in play for tournaments with tournament upsides.
Yeah, I think this is a little bit more FanDuel centric for me. So on DraftKings, neither are going to be a priority by any means because of the multi-position eligibility. I don't have to be spending, in excess of 8K for either one of them. I think that there's a lot of other ways to go. I think this is going to be a very stars and scrubsy slate. I would also think if I got to that late night hammer and I had either Wood or Olynyk, I would kind of prefer to be on the side of them with the guaranteed minutes with nobody else on the floor that's going to take away usage from them. I would feel a lot better about that. But on FanDuel here, you got to pick one. You're trying to ride with the center. And I think Rudy Gobert really kind of sticks out and only getting right around 3% more ownership here at the moment. I would definitely side with Gobert. Kevon Looney is not going to have any kind of capability of handling him. Draymond Green playing backup 5 there. Not really going to be stopping anybody there. It's really going to be an issue for him there to try to stop Rudy Gobert here. As you said, it's a 2-point line, so the game should be staying pretty intact. You're taking Mike Conley and you're taking Donovan Mitchell off the floor. There's opportunity for a couple extra buckets there. I think Rudy Gobert at 7,900 is kind of a steal on this slate. Jared Allen kind of being thrown into the mix makes it difficult for me to know really where I want to go on FanDuel yet. But Jonas Valanciunas, I've generally been playing a lot more of, but with Jaren Jackson now in the starting lineup here, I was kind of expecting those minutes to start to get ramped up here, getting closer to the playoffs, because that's a guy that they're going to want to have for that play-in game scenario. And I think that might cut directly into Jonas Valanciunas, but against Toronto, 36 minutes, it would be an absolute smash. If you gave me 36 minutes of J-Val, I would take him just about every single tournament slate forever. But it's just so hard to peg those minutes. We've seen 31, 20, 35, 27. It's all over the place.
Good stuff. That's going to do it for our one-on-one. I'm learning so much in the chat. Apparently, Hollywood Video and Movie Gallery were owned by the same people. Movie galleries were in rural areas, which makes sense. We also didn't mention Family Video, which my town also had one of those. So just wanted to clear that up.
Family Video. Yeah, that was not the place to go in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I will tell you that. Yeah.
All right, we're going to head to the diamond now for biggest bat for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you guys think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Devers plus 320, Mike Moustakas plus 400, Suarez plus 400, JD Martinez plus 400, Nick Castellanos plus 450. Spags, we'll start with you here.
This is a pick that I just made on the MLB Deeper Dive show with Alex and Terry, which if you're not watching those daily, especially as the season starts to switch over with more MLB tournaments out there and more money up top, I would say start watching that Deeper Dive show because we're doing a good job with that every day around 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. East Coast time. But my pick there, and my pick will be the same here, Rafael Devers, and I was actually encouraged to see that he is in fact the top odds getter here because to me, he jumped out in a meaningful way. Going against a guy in Jorge Lopez who has really pronounced lefty-righty splits, giving up a 1.7 whip, 6.3 xFIP along with a 255 ISO to lefty batters. There's a lot of lefties in this lineup for Boston. So if you really wanted to try to get different there, and a guy like Marwin Gonzalez, who I'm not intrigued by for DFS, I think is going to be really highly owned. Find a prop bet on him. Take some stabs on these lefty hitters because it is a really good power spot here, both playing in Baltimore and going against Lopez. But Devers is the best hitter out of the group, out of all the lefties here. A 288 ISO of his own against right-hand pitching since 2019. He's got a ton of pop. I think he's the leading odds getter for a reason, and yet those odds still aren't as high as I think they should be. I guess maybe the cold weather is a bit of a knock there, but Devers to me is an easy top pick here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, but I also want to just throw out that you do have Houston. So we finally got that start. So Junior Guerra is going to be starting for the Angels. just kind of like a short reliever role, basically, to start it off. It looks like 5.5 run implied total here for Houston. Don't forget about Yordan Alvarez. So when he pops into the mix, just throw him into your pool of guys, because he's going to just start rocking here. We're starting to see some signs of life out of him, and he's going to be the best hitter on the planet for years and years to come, I believe. And so I want to be investing in him just about every single slate out, being DFS in the prop market everywhere. So don't sleep on him. But as you said, right now, out of the people available, Devers is definitely the go-to guy, just covering the ball here of late.
It is now time for a brand new segment that was created by Eric.
Oh, goodness. Here we are. So now they're going to hate it. If they had known it was going to be Spags' segment, if they had said, oh, this is Spags' segment, they would have been like, oh, this is a well-manufactured bit. This was crafted by the mind of a comedic genius.
People now they're going to be like,
parlay. Hate it. Yeah, people no, like the pirate you can't see the pirate parlay. I hit 2 of 3 last week and nobody cared. So we're gonna shelf it for a minute and we'll come back to it. It's whatever. I'm just trying to make people money and nobody cared. It's fine.
Didn't you order a pirate outfit?
I did, and the hat sucks. So we're reestablishing this.
I remember you saying like,
"Oh, on Monday
there'll be an eye patch here," and you're just like, "No, the hat's not good enough, so I can't put on."
I'm not gonna wear just an eye patch. I'm gonna like that's not exactly what we're going for here on the tip off.
I would have and also here's so you could tell like it wasn't one of my segments, because I would have there would have been some wrinkle that would have made it very silly, but I also would have been like puff pass or play. It would have been like I would have found some sort of weed. There's a lot of ways I would have gone here. This is a quick window into how my brain works.
All 4 of us here. We got Jordan behind the wall now in LA as well. All 4 of us, medicinal purposes, of course, in order to take care of our well-being.
Pass or play all day long in the greater Los Angeles area.
All right, I'm gonna puff on the first one, then that's fine.
All right. Whatever. Here we go. Yes, as we've mentioned, it is called pass or play. Being able to know when to pass on a bet is sometimes just as important as picking the right line to bet on. Among these betting lines and player props listed on OddsShopper today, would you like to pass or play, or in Spags' case, puff? First up, we've got James Johnson under 11.5 points. Eric, we'll start with you.
So if you go over to OddsShopper, one of the coolest things, so I got the opportunity to do a tutorial video on how to use some of the NBA player prop stuff as we're getting closer to the NBA playoffs. There are so many amazing edges that can be had just by utilizing Awesemo's projections. They go directly onto the screen on OddsShopper. If you click over here, you can find which are the best bets on the day according to win percentage, but most importantly, according to ROI. Right now, you have Najee Marshall. That's kind of assuming that Brandon Ingram's going to be in there. I think the James Johnson one does too, but I still like taking the under in that 11.5 number. In the current iteration of the Pelicans, the way that Awesemo's bringing it down as they're projected for today, 43.6% expected ROI. I would wait to bet on that until a little bit later, till you have a little bit more clarity. I don't see that number changing between now and tip-off whatsoever. Maybe some other news will come in here, but currently not that involved usage-wise in the last couple of games here as well. Going to be playing right around his 27 minutes that we've seen in the last couple. Like, James Johnson's a fine play in DFS, but I think taking the under is going to be an advantageous way to go according to OddsShopper today.
I think this would be one that I'd be more inclined to pass on, just because I'm not James Johnson to me has been tough, because he's a guy that to me, I would think you go in a different direction with his minutes. And that first time that he was starting, they did get a little more Wenyen Gabriel in the mix and a little more Wundu. And I think those are guys that should be playing more minutes over James Johnson at this point. But then they realized, oh yeah, James Johnson's actually helping us win, and we still can sort of make the play-in game, even though it's a lower probability at this point for New Orleans. I think they're playing James Johnson. And if you see that flip around, whether it be just psychologically for Stan Van Gundy or in terms of them actually realizing they're not going to make the play-in game, I think James Johnson minutes to me out of all these guys, like Bledsoe is another obvious candidate, but somebody you can point to is the minutes not being there. And that gives me some concern, but also this mainly gives it a lot of volatility. So to me right now, this one would be a stay away, just because I don't have the highest confidence. So I would pass it, and I'll hopefully I can find another one to either puff on or play.
Well, how about this one, Spags? We've got Rockets at Blazers minus 14.5.
So this is one for me that I would probably be willing to play it. I'm not feeling it enough to puff on it, I think, and give it that full cosign.
You just changed the name of the bit midway through.
He changed it.
What a dick. Like, you can't let me have one thing that's my own on this show. You make fun of my pirate voice. You come up with every other gimmick and shtick on this entire stupid thing. Whatever. Do you want me to go? I'll go.
Well, do you want to puff, pass, or play?
It feels like Paul George all over again. You said, fine, whatever.
No, I think the puff part would just signify the highest possible cosign I give. And it works well because there's a 3. So you get one puff, you get one pass, one play. I'd play this one, but I wouldn't puff it because I just don't feel the highest confidence level.
Do I get to talk now, or
yeah? No, go ahead. I mean, tell me if you want to puff class.
Eric is the only one brainstorming, coming up with these segments, and then we change them.
Well, whatever. So 5 games in a row, I have been betting against the Rockets. I will continue to do it. Just because something doesn't work the first 5 times doesn't mean that you stop. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. In the words of Fleetwood Mac, let it be known that is what we are going to do today. We are going to take the Blazers. 14.5 is a low number. I don't know what the Wooden Olynyk status is going to work out as, but I know that it really doesn't matter to me because this Houston Rockets team against a team like the Blazers who need to assert themselves and start keeping that 6th seed, need to keep their foot on the gas here. The Lakers winning yesterday was a big, huge win. I think that really kind of puts a charge into the Blazers here. I believe that they're going to go out and obliterate Houston. I think they assert themselves in 3 quarters, 25-point lead. I'm calling it through 3 quarters, and then they hold on for the cover.
All right. And finally, Eric, we've got Jazz at Golden State +2.
Eric loves his drama. Hold on, Stephen Leibowitz. We are off the rail. No, stop it. I do not like drama. What I like is having my decisions and my bits read correctly and not just changed midway through. That's what I like. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Are you mad when I mess up the script because you write paragraphs?
Well, yeah, in the words of Hamilton as well, he built symphonies or whatever. What's that song in Burn or whatever, where they talk about the paragraphs, how good Hamilton, you're
the only one here that's going to know the Hamilton.
Finally, Eric, blow up. I will show you a blow up. Here we go.
We are combusting. Okay.
I'm ready. Oh, do I get to talk about my thing now? Yes, Jazz and Golden State. This is very exciting as well. We haven't gotten to talk about the Golden State side of the ball, which is kind of what I was looking at here. They're going to play an 8-man rotation today, and I don't think it's really being expressed in the DFS industry, and I don't think it's necessarily expressed in the betting lines here. So yeah, you're taking Conley and you're taking Donovan Mitchell off the floor, but the Jazz have some extra bodies. They've got Gorgeous Niang, who's an Iowa State graduate, who's just going out there and asserting himself in low 20s minutes and knocking down threes and playing good basketball. They've got a number of pieces that they can go to on the bench here. Golden State's pretty thin in terms of who they're going to be rolling out there today. Nico Mannion ended up there in the 4th quarter because they were just annihilating OKC by like 40 at that point in time. But Damian Lee playing big minutes, I think he's kind of sneaky in some spots here. From a DFS perspective, I really think Golden State is being undervalued, but from a real life perspective, I think that this bodes well. I think I would play the Utah side -2. Another team that needs to win. Both of these teams need to keep winning. The only team that doesn't have any playoff consideration on this entire slate is the Houston Rockets. And it's funny because they've been so popular the last couple slates and possibly could be again today. But I like going to the Utah Jazz side of the ball. I don't see an answer for Rudy Gobert. Steph Curry, the Jazz have been very, very good defensively. I don't think anybody can contain Steph Curry. He's very matchup proof, but I like going to the Jazz side of it just a little bit deeper. I trust them a little bit more. If they can kind of keep Steph Curry from going for 45, I think that they have a really good chance to be covering here.
I think this is about as close to one as you can get here. I have based on I talk sometimes about the per 100 possessions numbers that I use to sort of as a baseline for my projections. And I would have Utah at 110.9 based on that, and Golden State at 110.8 implied points. So that's really, to me, screams that the play that I would be puffing on out of all these would be going to Utah here to take this one. I think would be the move. I do like Golden State to cover, but I don't know if there's enough value. I think Utah can win it overall and should win it overall. Really, I think the talent level still a little bit higher there, whereas Golden State, I think, is playing above their heads a little bit, mostly on Steph Curry continuing to shoot the lights out. And I think if you just take a little bit of a margin there on Steph Curry, still getting that volume, but not quite shooting as effectively, that's enough for Utah to win. So that is my certified puff play of the day would be Utah with the spread there.
I misspoke. I said Damian Lee instead of Jordan Poole. That's who I meant, by the way. So thank you so much for keeping me accountable and keeping me calm today.
Well, we try.
Yeah, you don't succeed.
That was Pass or Play. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. You are so welcome, Kayla. It is so nice to hear positive affirmation.
Chat, let us know what you thought. Also, someone brought up a good point. They said there's no way Eric stays calm for 18 holes. Eric, who are you on the golf course? What are you like?
So this is ironic because I think I'm generally very, very calm. I played Saturday, so I haven't been practicing that much lately. And for whatever reason, I still expect myself to play like a high level of golf. Played like absolute garbage again on Saturday. Just kind of not been very good lately. I got some stuff I got to figure out in the old golfing department. So might have said a shoot or gosh darn it a time or two on the golf course this weekend. But other than that, pretty calm for the most part. But I just make a ton of birdies and just make some doubles here alongside it. So that's the thing. Consistency, not necessarily my forte.
All right. There you go, chat.
I'm Happy Gilmore confirmed. That's a decent enough comp. I will take it. It's 364 more days till next pass and play sketch. I got to toughen up.
Don't forget, people in the chat really loving Puff Pass and play. I think that's the main thing. Marshall White saying Spags' segment was pretty good. Thank you, Marshall. I appreciate it. It's nice to hear the accolades from people out there who realize, that sometimes you just need the pro to come in and give a little improv and make something sing.
I'm just doing the rest of it. You have to deal with my eyebrow the rest of the show. That's what you have to do, you foolish people.
I'd puff on that eyebrow too. One of my favorite plays of the day is that eyebrow looking like that.
All right.
Griff Punisher, nice work with the new segment, Spags. Thank you. It's so nice to hear from my peers in the YouTube chat. I'm doing a good job with the segments that I'm bringing here.
It's just the dumbest day.
We're on the verge of a meltdown.
We have 10 minutes left. Thank God.
Let's head to No House Advantages prop or not. Let's take a look at some of No House Advantages props of the day for key players. Guys, do we like the over under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Dante DiVincenzo, 8.5 points plus assist Spags.
This is one of those that I knew was an Eric trick, and I'm right. It's in fact one of the highest bets on the board, according to Awesemo. And by trick, I mean the trick is on me. The trick is not on you guys out there because it's a fantastic bet to be taken on No House Advantage. According to Awesemo, an 86% chance of hitting the over. What is this line even doing on No House Advantage would be the question you might ask yourself. And I will say that's why I'm glad to have Eric doing the run sheet on days like this, because sometimes he'll find some of those gems for you guys. And this Dante DiVincenzo prop, taking the over on it, looks to me like a 7 or 8 pointer on No House Advantage today.
If we get to 1,500 likes today, I will shave the other eyebrow to match this one. Yes, I will. If you get to 1,500 likes, it has to be 1,500, and I have to see it.
We have 9 minutes.
I will shave the other half of this one to match it. It will be perfect symmetry.
Like by the end of Live Before Lock, we're saying, right?
Yeah.
You should have said that at the top of the show.
It's got to get to 1,500.
1,500 people aren't watching.
Yeah. Well, then that's too bad. Then we're not going to reach it. That's really too bad. But
no,
let's lower the number.
It has to be on the whole stream, so we have the whole deeper dive and the whole live before lock to get there. So we can conclude the marathon of Spags by getting Eric to shave both eyebrows. This is everything's really coming up for my segment planning.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, and yeah, it doesn't mean that I can't wear glasses on every single show, but it will happen. It will absolutely happen.
Hit the like button.
That's a large number.
Smash. And
I don't know, what's our record at? What's the record? Is it 1,200?
I think it was 13 something from one of the early, like Deeper Dive got a lot of likes, and then we had, I think it was one of the early money times.
All right. Well, smash that like button, y'all. Yeah. That's got to be your path for it, and it's got to be by the end of the day. So otherwise that's a no-go. But back to No House Advantage, our lovely sponsors for us. Dante DiVincenzo, 8.5. It kind of seems like a low number to me. So I definitely think you're going to want to take the over on it. Definitely seeing enough court time. Awesemo projecting him rate for around 12.5. That's looking like a very strong over today. Definitely one of your highest confident point slots.
Next up, we have Lonzo Ball, 33.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Eric.
So going this direction on Lonzo, I think this is where game theory can kind of come into play a little bit. So Lonzo Ball can obviously get there, but this is definitely a strong under 33.5 to 20. Like we've got him right around 27 right now. Second best under on the board, and we'll get to the best under and the automatic 10-point play here in a second. But Lonzo Ball, the points plus rebounds plus assists looks really good, but the assists at 7.5, where we're projecting him for 5.75 with no real shooters out there besides Eric Bledsoe. I don't necessarily think Lonzo Ball, like he's going to have to basically be driving, kicking, and I don't know who's going to be knocking down open threes for this basketball team. So I kind of like taking the under on the assists a little bit more. So not sure how many people are going to be looking at this board, but if they sort it and they click on Lonzo Ball points plus rebounds plus assists, I'm going to go down 2 and just take the assist one alone. And I feel pretty good about that as well. They're less than a percentage point away from each other. So a little bit of game theory here for NHA today.
I think that's actually a very good way to approach it, because I think there is a world here for the upside of Lonzo Ball, just given the fact he has been shooting good amount, just really hasn't been coming through. And I think we saw him miss a lot of shots in that Philly game. Then last time out, just didn't quite shoot as much. I think it's still possible that he finds his way to more shots, especially if Bledsoe does pull back. But I think the assist prop, I would agree. Like, I don't know that he's setting up a lot of these guys. You're seeing everybody else kind of creating their own shots, going one by one here. And Memphis too does kind of clamp down on the assisted plays in general overall. So I think, to me, there's a lot of reasons in taking that under. So I would agree. I think that just taking the Lonzo assist under would be one that does seem more appealing, and a good call, one amidst many, by Eric on the show.
And finally, someone's trying to suck up. Finally, we have Colin Sexton, 9.5.
You so much.
9.5 3-pointers made, Spags.
I would say this Colin Sexton one, 9.5 3-pointers is one of those lines on No House Advantage that I presume is them doing a bit. And I guess there is a pathway for him to achieve that today, because you are getting Kevin Love and all these other guys out. But 9.5 3-pointers for Colin Sexton. We sometimes talk about how they put these lines in there, and it could just be somebody typing and just not paying attention and doing that. Sometimes I think they're keeping them in there as little hidden gems for you. But taking the under on that one seems like it should be a 9 or 10 pointer on No House Advantage. If it goes the other way, then God bless Colin Sexton. Play him in DFS just in case.
I was going to say, if he ends up hitting the over here, no, we're not going to say that. I'll just shave off all my eyebrows. It's just, they're all gone. That's not going to happen. We got a super chat from Mr. Gene B. Kim. He said, how about we pluck the number of eyebrows as the number of likes? That 1,500 plucks of my eyebrows sounds pretty not fun. So let's not do that. But appreciate the super chat, my dude. But yeah, this is just a wrong line. And I love when they give you these little freebies for the 10-point confidence slot, because if 1 or 2 people don't end up playing it, you're having a huge edge. And I guarantee you somebody today does not put him in the 10 confidence point slot. So that's just an auto play. Make sure you lock him in today.
All right. And don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports. Just download the No House Advantage app today and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. It is time for Good Dog, Bad Dog.
Woof.
A segment we can all agree on.
In
real life, that was pitiful. In real life, there's no such
so
thing
is Jordan's
as a bad
producing skills. Like if we had Tyler behind the glass.
Well, there's a lot of ricochet shots
from the top rope. Just saying, Tyler, I'm pretty sure had the sound effects going. He had some musical, dramatic music going on Friday live before lock. Yeah, you sip your water over there and deflect, Jordan Klein.
Yo, all right.
Man.
In real life, there is no such thing as a bad dog. And betting in DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Eric, before Jordan mutes you, who's your good dog?
That's so true. So I don't necessarily see like a lot of like good dogs that I would be wanting to target too much. I think if I had to take anybody that would be on like the good dog side of things, maybe the Pelicans against Memphis, but I'm pretty much on the side of a lot of the favorites today because I love chalk. Chalk is my favorite thing in the entire world. So why not just money line all the favorites together on a 6-gamer and just collect money? How does that sound?
I think my good dog would be New Orleans going against Memphis. And I know New Orleans is going to be shorthanded and they certainly have the capability of playing down, but Memphis has also been playing down in a way that I think is a little bit concerning over the home stretch recently. Maybe it's just too many bodies here. The rec league rotations they have where everybody's getting minutes, maybe not the best, but I think there's a pathway for New Orleans to cover today. So I think they're a good dog. I don't think they win, but I do think they have a shot here to cover.
And Spags, tell us about your bad dog.
My bad dog for the day, and this is going to be a controversial one, but I think the Washington Wizards, or Wizards as their friends may call them, are in fact a bad dog in this spot. I have some concern that Atlanta blows them out today. Atlanta's going the right way. They have figured out a lot of things here. I think Trae Young's timeout kind of solidified the other guys who were Bogdan needed that confidence builder. Maybe Kevin Huerter needed it a little bit too, though he's, his minutes have been a little bit down. But point being, I think the team sort of figured some stuff out where now Trae coming back in hasn't been quite as ball dominant as he has been previously, but the other guys are pulling their weight. And I think this is the one way that Westbrook Westbrook can fail today, or quote unquote fail, is that if they get blown out and Westbrook just doesn't get that run, and you see, Ish Smith or Neto taking some more minutes here, maybe Russ doesn't get that fourth quarter stint. I think there are some ways here that is how Russ fails. And I think Atlanta's talented enough that they could run away with this one.
I like that call a lot, actually. Trae Young on Fanduel, I believe he was number one contender for Josh Engelman. We never shout out Josh Engelman on this show, so want to give him some props. He does a lot of work for us over here between the process show in the morning, does the strategy show in the mornings. I'll be doing live before lock with him tomorrow, so check out his contenders. But Trae Young standing out big time over on Fanduel today, and yeah, I do like that call quite a bit. I think I'm going to stay with that Houston Rockets being my bad dog. We've now seen that line drop a little bit. I'm looking at a little bit of this line movement. They opened at 15. It's dropped to 14. I don't know who's betting on the Rockets here. I understand that they have covered 5 games in a row, but Cinderella, it's going to turn into a pumpkin. I'm sorry. So let's rock on the Portland side of it.
All right. We've got 1 minute really quickly. Eric, give us your make or break.
Oh, man. So Trae Young over on Fanduel probably going to be a make or break. He's my highest owned player for my first run of it over here. I just ran something while we were on the show to take a look at it, but I don't want to play Dean Wade. I really don't want to play Dean Wade, but I think you might have to play Dean Wade on DraftKings at 3,400. So if that doesn't go well for me, whoopsie.
Yeah, I would say that Dean Wade probably in that hunt for me too, just in terms of how he's going to construct lineups. Not a guy who has the highest ceiling necessarily, or the highest per minute ceiling, but still a guy who's going to be getting pretty secure runs. So I would agree with that one. But really the make or break right here is the people out there watching the stream, hitting the like button or not, because if you don't get us to 1,500 likes today, you're going to break me, because we had a shot here. Eric just making these bets willy-nilly left and right, making fool's bets with Greg. And now today he's just offering up his eyebrows for nothing. Kayla and I just sat here, and this guy's willing to give his eyebrows away if you hit the like button. That is free content, free joy for all of us if you hit that like button here. So I'm not like Josh Engelman. I'm filling in from today live before lock with Greg. I don't pander for likes. I don't shame for likes, any of that, but I am personally begging you guys to hit that like button here, because when manna from heaven drops down upon you, you owe it to yourself to take a bite. And that is what Eric's little eyebrows are today. All
right, Spags, give us your fade of the day.
Eric's eyebrows.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, truly the fade. It's going to be the look. It's a style, guys. It's a style. Let's go with God. Who would be my fade? Yeah, I'll go with Norman Powell over on Fanduel, coming in as the highest owned small forward.
All right, the like count is nearing 400, so keep it going. Do it for everybody. Eric's going to shave his other eyebrow.
I'm going to slash my other eyebrow.
Your fiance must be so sad when you just show up with the...
She may or may not have banged on the door and you didn't hear it. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. It's a heavy toll to have to pay. 1,500. If we haven't hit that number, this is the event to do it.
All right. And on that note, it is time for us to go today. Don't forget to hit the like button, as we've all heard by now, for Eric's eyebrow. And subscribe. The deeper dive and live before lock are coming your way next. We'll be back with you tomorrow on the tip-off at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm Kayla Knierim. Thanks to Spags and Eric. We'll see you tomorrow.
Also a bad day to do this, because I get the live before lock show. I get an hour just a whore for a live.
I was going to say, how much multi-accounting is going to be going?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive, presented by OddsShopper. I'm Dave Loughran at Laffy_D on the Twitters. Give your boy a follow, LOUGHY_D, joined by Adam Scherer at ShipMyMoney DFS, here to break down a 6-game NBA slate where Russell Westbrook is still stuck at $11,000 on Draftkings. That's just one of the few things, the many things that we're going to talk about today, Adam, along with the fact that Eric Lindquist made the mistake of saying that if we got the 1,500 likes during this show, he would shave his eyebrows off. Now, is this on stream that he would do it?
I don't think on stream, and he said he would shave. So I don't know what he did, but he has like a slash through one of his eyebrows right now. He said if we get the 1,500 likes, he will make the other one match it.
Oh.
So
all right, well,
it's not fully shaved, but
no, we're going full. We're going full shave if we hit 15.
He'll still look ridiculous.
We're going full shave, Eric. We got to, man. 1,500 likes by the end of the full stream, unless he was talking about just the first. No, he couldn't have been. Let's get it there. I need to say nothing else outside of subscribe to the channel as well while you're at it. Hit that notification bell. And if you want to join, get those perks, the emojis, the badges, and a bunch of other cool things. Hit us up right down there, that join button. You know how to do it. All right. So we've got 6 games to dive into. We're happy to have you guys with us. Should be a fun one. First, we kick it off with Washington and Atlanta. That's going to be an absolute mess. A lovely mess, though. It's May basketball. Like this is the equivalent of early to mid-April basketball, Adam, since the season started so late. How are you approaching this slate? Once again, the same question I ask you every single day.
Yeah, pretty much the same answer as it's been for the last like month and a half. It's stars and scrubs because that's just the most obvious way to build. It's the easiest way to build. There's a ton of guys to pay up for in good spots. Even out of the pay up options, like the guys that we're going to say are secondary options are still extremely good plays. And then there's, a couple of guys that really stand out as top tier guys. There's a bunch of value. You have Cleveland with 9 active players against the fastest team in the league. You have a potentially shorthanded Houston team against Portland in one of the late games. You have Washington missing Bradley Beal. There's just no shortage of value to get to that will allow you to pay up for the stars that you want.
All right. So now we dive into Washington and Atlanta. Let's just dive straight into the fire. Okay. There's no easing into this one. Washington 8-point dogs against the Hawks, 238 total. Bradley Beal's out for at least the next couple of games. So Russell Westbrook coming in at $11,000 on DraftKings. On Fanduel, a little bit different now, isn't it? Right? A little different, to the tune of 12,400, still getting around 26% ownership on the last update, but still a lot different. What's crazy to me, and I tweeted this, I also DM'd you, but we could say bad things about Russ all day long. We could get Josh Engelman on the stream to talk shit about Russell Westbrook for all game, but we don't need to do that, right? He's doing something really, really remarkable, extraordinary, one might say, to the point where he is minus 400 to triple double tonight. Now, think about how absurd that is. Do you know what his points, rebounds, and assist total is? I'll tell you, right? Because you can bet points, rebounds, assists total, all of them, 54.5. These are not human numbers. Minus 400 to triple double is not something you might never see it again in your lifetime, Adam, for a guy that's coming in end of season, minus 400 to triple double.
Yeah, just absolutely insane. I figured he was favored, but when you sent me the line, it's crazy to think about. And it's even crazier because we're not looking at it like, wow, that's insane. Go bet against that. It's just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I
know. That's the craziest part about all of it. So if you were to actually take the implied odds on that, what's that in? What's that, 80% chance?
I think, yeah.
I think it's an 80%. Yeah, I believe it is. I think it's an 80% chance to triple double. Those are spectacular odds. I mean, and if I was taking one of them, which I'm not, I would bet yes. He's doing it every single game, and now there's no Bradley Beal. Who else is going to do anything? Davis Bertans. Let's dive into that same conversation now. We'll start with Russell Westbrook against Atlanta. No Bradley Beal. I won't even say, what are you doing with Russell Westbrook, but how much Russell Westbrook do you intend on having today?
As much as I can, especially on DraftKings. So I was talking with someone on Twitter earlier, but FanDuel at least raised his price to where he's 12,400. And even though maybe that's still a little bit underpriced, when you consider that FanDuel scoring hurts him and look at the pricing for the rest of the position, where like he's $2,000 more than Curry, he's $4K more than Trae Young, it makes sense. Like he's in a tier by himself, as he should be. So I still think he's a very good play on FanDuel, but at least there are some decisions to be made. On DraftKings, he's 11K. He's the same price basically as all the other pay up options within, like $400 or $500. And he's leading the NBA in minutes per game over the last month. He's averaging a triple double easily for the season. And now he's playing without Bradley Beal. In games without Beal this year, he's averaged over 1.7 DraftKings points per minute. He's got a 34.5% usage rate. You've seen the rebounding numbers come up since the All-Star break, now that he's not playing through a torn quad. And his assist percentage without Beal this year is 58%. It's just absurd numbers, playing huge minutes. And then you factor in the other stuff, like, we talk a lot about, narratives not really being something that you want to factor in. But for one, the Wizards actually do need to win this game. They're competing for seeding in the play-in tournament. So there's all the incentive in the world for him to play huge minutes for that reason. And we know that Westbrook, he likes his triple doubles. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. And it's the kind of thing where you're not saying, oh, if Westbrook scores 40 points, he sets the record tonight. And you're saying, oh, well, he's going to try really hard to score 40. Rebounding and stuff, it's effort. So like he's going to, not that he wouldn't anyway, but he's going to try and get this triple double and get the record here. So everything just looks great for Westbrook.
Yeah. I mean, what more do I have to resort to than a guy being minus 400, the triple double tonight to break a record? Like there's really nothing else there. And you're right. 12.4 is a lot different than 11,000 on DraftKings. 11,000 on DraftKings. I'm not even kidding. I look at a 6-game slate. I see 45% and go, that seems a little low.
I think it is low.
It is, right? Because I don't know. Maybe we'll get an update sooner than later and we'll see. But it's an odd spot where we've seen him have these really big games and not be in the optimal. I understand that it's still possible, right? But like when you're somebody that's $11,000 and you have a 40+% chance of being in the optimal lineup tonight, according to our boom bust tool, that's such an absurd number at that price point.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of breaks like, and I don't mean this, as a knock on our ownership projections or anyone else's, but just like it's not supposed to work like this. He kind of just like breaks them. Like when you're 11K, you're not supposed to be such a clear value that you're in like 2/3 of the lineups. That's not how they're built. That's not supposed to happen. But yeah, it's just he's on a whole different level, and yeah, he's going to be definitely the highest owned out of the pay up options. One of the highest owned guys on the entire slate. And there's no reason he shouldn't be.
All right, what are we doing with the remaining options from Washington? Something I mentioned to Josh on the strategy show this morning. Hopefully you're watching that every day, Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, is when you look at the rest of this team, usually when a top player like Beal, just an absolutely elite scorer, is out, there's so many different ways to go because you assume there's going to be more ball handling responsibilities because one guy can't handle all of that. Well, in this case, that's not necessarily true. Everything can just get siphoned off by Russell Westbrook, as it's already happened. Look at Bradley Beal's lack of peripherals when playing alongside Westbrook. So I'm more inclined, and maybe you can tell me where I'm wrong and we can have that discussion, but I feel more inclined to get to guys that I can not rely on, but that I know can rack up actual points, because I'm a little bit nervous to be heavily targeting players who, if they aren't, or who are relying on ball handling, point guards, assists, rebounds, and stuff like that, because how much does Bradley Beal being out really change that at all outside of overall usage and scoring itself?
Yeah. The one thing that I would say is like Raul Neto and Ish Smith. I think they probably play a couple more minutes here, but also they're capable scorers. They're not, they'd look better if Westbrook were out, because the playmaking numbers would be available, and they're not with Westbrook in, especially assuming he's going to play 38 to 40 minutes. But I do still think there is some value, especially Ish Smith at 3,300 on DraftKings. In the last game that Beal was out and Westbrook played back in April, Smith played about 22 minutes against Phoenix. I think that you're getting 22 to 24 minutes from him here. And if you assume that he plays about 2/3 of his minutes with Westbrook, about 1/3 without Westbrook, he would project for about 0.88 DraftKings points per minute, which makes him a reasonable value. Neto's a reasonable value too, assuming he plays around 30 minutes. But you're right. These are guys that they're going to be asked to take on a little bit bigger scoring role, but they're still not going to be, guys that are going out there and just chucking up 15 shots, you wouldn't think. Rui Hachimura has actually seen a bit of a benefit without Beal. In 6 games without Beal and with Westbrook this year, he's got a 23.7% usage rate. Still pretty scoring dependent, but he's cheap. He's someone I think you can look to. And then you can roll the dice on Davis Bertans as well. I assume you get 28 to 30 minutes from him. He's got a 17% usage rate without Beal on the floor this year, only 13% when he's played alongside Beal. His per minute production jumps like 1/4 of a fantasy point per minute. So still a pretty scary guy to roster, because he's a scoring dependent player that has a 17% usage rate. It's easy to see how that can go poorly. But I do think that the Wizards are going to need Bertans to take on a bigger role without Beal.
Rui's kind of interesting to me just because it's kind of always difficult to predict what you're going to get from him. If you go to OddsShopper.com, everything there is totally free. You can search just every player for their player props, which is what I love about it. You can track your bets. You can set a watch list. You can set alerts and notifications for when a line moves in the direction you're looking. And of course, there's a million amazing offers on all these books trying to get your business, because, well, the sports betting boom is happening right now. But the biggest thing is when you're shopping these odds, you got all of the different books that are available to you to figure out where the best odds are and which you can hit, because any good sports bettor will tell you that to be a sustainable winner, you have to shop around. Rui everywhere is 15.5 points. Where are you at on someone like, or at 15.5 points with Bradley Beal being and his 30+% usage rate being off the court? Like, if there's one player, I guess I could ask you, that you think benefits the most from a scoring standpoint. And I agree with you on Ish Smith, very cheap. Raul Neto, they should see a little bit elevated opportunity. But as a scorer, who do you think benefits the most outside of Westbrook?
Rui.
Okay. Yeah, I do too.
we've seen the Wizards, especially, like, they'll probably stagger it so that Rui's on the floor when Westbrook isn't, and they'll run the offense through him. We've seen them do that before. He's got about a 23% usage rate in the 6 games he's played without Beal and with Westbrook. I have him at like 18 points for this game, 18 actual points. So, I think you said the line was 15.5. That seems low to me.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, if you have him at 18.5, you got him around 3 points higher than his actual prop right now. So there's one worth hitting. Anything else for Washington? I know we're spending a lot of time on this game, but there's a couple that won't be as time induced.
I think it's pretty much Westbrook's the guy, obviously. Rui, I think, gets a pretty sizable bump. And maybe it goes a little bit overlooked. Like, I know when I wrote the deep dive today, just kind of like baseline numbers weren't really suggesting that Rui got that big of a bump. But then once I dug in a little bit more after the article, it showed up. So I think maybe Rui gets a little bit just sort of underprojected or under-owned across the industry. And then you're getting value with guys like Smith, Bertans, and Howell and Neto that can kind of round out your lineups.
Okay. Atlanta, Trae Young coming in at 9,300 on DraftKings. What about on Fanduel, where he is down to $8,400 against Washington? Pace up spot for the Atlanta Hawks. I was even looking at the 40.5 points, rebounds, and assist prop, thinking he could go 30, 10, and 3 real easy in a spot like this tonight.
Yeah, for sure. You said it's 40.5.
Yeah.
I have it 41.9. So
pretty close. Yeah. That's what
close.
I'm saying. That's not one I'm sold on, but 40.5 is a pretty good number for a guy that's priced at 8,400. If you're looking at it that way.
Yeah, I really like the salary on Young, even on DraftKings at 9,300. And I think there's a couple of things that make him a little bit easier to get to tonight than he normally is. Because a lot of times it feels like we're saying, Trae Young can have a big game, but there's all these other guys. Tonight, you actually have a pretty decent discount between him and the top tier of players. On DraftKings, he's only $400 less than Damian Lillard. But like on FanDuel, he's $1,000 less or $800 less. And outside of Lillard, he's still on DraftKings like $1,500 less than Curry. He's $1,700 less than Westbrook. So I think that gap is pretty appealing. But also, Washington plays at the second fastest pace over the last month. They've been one of the fastest teams the entire season. But I also really like it when you can get players that have really high ceilings on the team that's playing against one of the most popular plays on the slate, because everybody's going to play Westbrook, but you're going to get obviously a lot lower percentage of people playing Trae Young. But if this game is competitive down to the wire and you get that 40 or 41 minute game from Westbrook, there's a good chance you're getting the full 35 or 36 minutes from Young. There's a good chance Young's putting up a really good game. And to some extent, he does positively correlate with Westbrook. So that's one extra thing I kind of like about him here. The same can be said for Capella, John Collins, Gallinari, all these guys on Atlanta. Is it should be a high scoring game. And that's part of the reason. I mean, there's other reasons, of course, but part of the reason Westbrook's getting so much ownership is this game has a 236 point total. Being able to go to a team like Atlanta that has several guys that produce at a very high rate per minute, like Trae Young, like Clint Capella, I think kind of just boosts the ceiling of your lineup when you pair them with Westbrook.
Okay. And I just looked it up. Trae Young averages 41 points, rebounds, and assists on the season. So I guess the question is, how much do you value this matchup?
You should value it a lot.
A lot, right? Yeah, I think the over looks pretty nice there. What about the rest of them? Deandre Hunter, finally questionable. I can't tell you how many times I've put in the run sheet, Deandre Hunter out. He's actually questionable for today, which is a huge upgrade from what we've seen over the past, what is it, like 2 months now?
Yeah, he hasn't played since the end of March.
Yeah, so outside of Trae, Capella is still a bit expensive. He was a big letdown last time out. Not that we had a lot of them because there were so many good players, even though he was in a good spot against the Pacers. Bogdanovich has played pretty solid basketball himself. His price has kind of come back down to earth. But more so than anything, when we talk about valuing this matchup, how much do you value it for guys that aren't named Trae Young?
I still really value it. I don't know that they'll be as easy to get into lineups as Young, but the thing that I like about both Collins and Capella is that, well, so in Capella's case, he averages almost 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. He's averaging about 30 minutes per game. Typically, that's what you're going to get from him. But once in a while, or often enough that, it should be factored in, you get those 34, 35-minute games. And if you get one of those, he's very likely to be one of the best center options. And then it's a good matchup. A lot of a lot of possessions, a lot of missed shots, a lot of rebound opportunities, block opportunities with Westbrook driving to the rim. So I think it's a very high upside spot for Capella. He's a little bit too expensive in terms of being a priority, but that's just going to drive down his ownership. And then with John Collins, he's been very tough to trust this year because his playing time's been erratic, but then it's also tough to trust his production because you have Trae Young taking so much usage. You have Clint Capella grabbing so many rebounds. But if he plays around 30 minutes here, he's only 6,400 on both FanDuel and DraftKings in a game that's likely to have more possessions than normal. I think he's the kind of guy where, again, it's going to be sort of difficult to prioritize getting him in the lineups, but he's the type of guy in this matchup where you could look back at the end of the night and just be like, damn, why don't I have more John Collins?
Okay. Here's a question from Jeremiah Johnson. I'm sure several people are questioning the same thing. Adam, with the price increase on FanDuel, if you're making one lineup tonight, would you plug in Westbrook?
I'm inclined to say yes, but I don't think it's as clear-cut an answer as it normally would be. I don't, if you asked me DraftKings, I would just say yes, absolutely. Like no questions asked. On FanDuel, you could certainly make reasonable lineups that don't have Westbrook, I guess is the way to put it. Like, I don't think he's a must play on FanDuel.
Let's talk about the Pacers in Cleveland then. Indiana 9-point favorites against the Cavaliers.
Hang on. I have one more thing for Atlanta.
Please go ahead.
DraftKings 4,800, Danilo Gallinari. He's up to 6,300 on FanDuel, so it's not as appealing. But he played 3 games ago. He played 32 minutes. Then he played 24 minutes in a blowout, followed it up at 28.5 last game. If this game's competitive, I think you're getting 27 or 28 from him. He seems to be healthy. He's getting, substantial run off the bench. This is the kind of game where Gallinari could just absolutely blow up against the Wizards at low ownership.
Okay.
Westbrook. So I just really quickly made my top 10 projected lineups on FanDuel. Westbrook's still in 8 of them.
He's in 8 of them at 12-4 and you just set no limits or anything, right? Just crunch 10 lineups.
Yeah, just said go.
Okay. Pacers 9-point favorites. We got a lot to talk about here as well. Brogdon and Jeremy Lamb are questionable. On the other side, if you're wondering why they're favored by 9, it's not just that the Cleveland Cavaliers are bad, but they'll be without Darius Garland. They'll be without Kevin Love, Cedi Osman, Isaiah Hartenstein, all 4 of them sidelined today. But let's start with the Pacers. Hopefully we will get news. That's why Live Before Lock is here as well. In the event that you and I don't get it during today's show, Live Before Lock with Greg and Spags is coming up after this. Josh Ingerman out celebrating his 7-year anniversary with the old lady. So he's not here today, but Live Before Lock taking you up till 7:30. Hopefully we'll get that news sooner than later though. Do you have Brogdon and Lamb in or out?
I have them in for right now.
Okay. With that being the case, what do you do with the rest of the Pacers? Because if Brogdon's out, we have to at least talk about how good Sabonis and Karis LeVert have been, even at elevated price points.
Yeah, without a doubt. If Brogdon's in, I think it's pretty safe to ignore Indiana with the exception of Sabonis. And it hurts Sabonis too. It makes it so Sabonis is more of like someone I'd be getting to in 150 lineups than someone I'd be getting to in a couple because it does hurt his production. He's averaged in games where Brogdon has played and Turner has not this year. Sabonis has averaged 1.39 DraftKings points per minute. In games where they've both been out, he's averaged 1.64 DraftKings points per minute. So you can see the drastic difference it's making in his production. The big reason is that his assist percentage goes from 24% with Brogdon in to 36% with Brogdon out. He just takes on a bigger role in terms of playmaking. And then he's also playing like 40 minutes in competitive games. So if Brogdon is out, Sabonis looks really good. I still would hesitate to say priority just because he is still up there with Giannis. You do have Westbrook still, you have Steph Curry, but I think he's a very, very good play if Brogdon is out. If Brogdon's in, it's more of I know this is a low probability play, but he's also going to be low owned, so I'll take some stabs at it kind of thing. But if Brogdon's in, he'd be the only one. Sabonis would be like the only one really that I'd be taking shots at on Indiana.
Guys, if there's one night you hit that like button, make it tonight so Eric on stream can shave his eyebrows. I'm not necessarily he thought he was in for all this, but we're too deep at this point.
Yeah, so we're just like adding we're just adding things to what he's going to do now.
Yeah, exactly. With 1,500's a lot, but we have over 2,000 watching right now. Still 40 minutes to go in this one, and then another hour. Like, this is actually doable. Just take that split second to do it. I thought we would all be able to enjoy this together and laugh at his expense. What's better than that? I don't know. I would say nothing outside of Josh having to grow a mustache and eat the chip. But you guys got those likes up, and I ate it with him. The Pocky One Chip Challenge, and that was hell. So,
So you're shaving your eyebrows with Eric now that you're adding all this?
No, I was going to say, let's introduce Eric to hell. But yeah, no, I'm not doing that. That's not happening. I'd much rather destroy my stomach with a nasty chip that I paid $40 for on Amazon because that was the only place you could get it. I looked it up, and normally they were like $3. Josh and I both dished out 40 a piece. for a fucking chip. Unbelievable. Anyway, anything else you want to hit on for the Pacers here? Breaking down the scenarios of how this plays out.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like the pricing has adjusted to where even if Brogdon's out, you can start to look to some of these guys, but they're still not going to look like great options in the context of the slate. You know, of course, LeVert looks better if Brogdon's out. TJ McConnell looks better, but I still wouldn't say either guy is someone that I would say is a top play.
Here's one. If we get to 1,500, would you shave your face completely? I would have to do it too.
No.
Come on. Come on. I look ridiculous with my face.
I look terrible shaved.
So you'll do it?
No.
How about just a soul patch?
That's even worse.
I know. Oh, we'll think of something. All right. Would you go just straight mutton chops and goatee?
You know, I'm too single to be doing shit to my face. I still need to go out.
All right. All right. Yeah, I guess I have the luxury of just doing it, pissing her off, but
right. Yeah, I have to go like sit at a bar for 2 weeks after that, just like covering my face up.
I know. All right, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll shave my whole face. I haven't done that since I was like very, very long time.
I think I did it once during like COVID quarantine when I was at my mom's and not going anywhere, and it was as bad as I expected it to be.
Last time I did was an accident. Came in with the trimmers and just slipped up and went straight up, and I just you know. At that point, it's a wrap.
That might actually be the reason that I did it too. I don't remember.
Yeah, I've done it on multiple occasions. Cleveland has a lot of guys out today. They got 9 active, and a lot of the large majority of these players that are active just aren't good, Adam. I mean, outside of Colin Sexton and Jarrett Allen, you drop down really far in terms of overall skill level. So what does that do for them, and what does that do for these value options as well?
So there's a couple things working in the favor of guys on Cleveland here. One, Indiana, in addition to not being great defensively, leads the league in pace. So you have this Cleveland team that's really cheap and has 9 bodies playing in a huge pace-up spot. We know Colin Sexton and Jarrett Allen produced at a high rate and, you know, look pretty good tonight. I wouldn't say either one's a top play at their positions, but they're both certainly in the conversation. But then you look to these cheaper guys and they're, for the most part, like close to minimum salary. And it's just so difficult to have a bad game at minimum salary. You know, you look to Dean Wade, he's only averaged 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute this season, but he's very likely to play, 32, 33 minutes at 3,400 on DraftKings. So it's hard for him to hurt you there. Damian Dotson, we've actually seen put up pretty solid numbers when he's gotten ball handling responsibilities this year. He's likely to be the backup behind Colin Sexton and then play some minutes, alongside him. I think there's a good chance you would get around 26 minutes from Dotson tonight at 3K. Broderick Thomas is my guess for who joins the starting lineup in place of Kevin Love, with Okoro and Wade sliding down. If he starts, I think you get 28 to 30 minutes. He's around, 0.7 to 0.75 fantasy points per minute. So another guy at 3K that is a reasonable option. So those 3, as far as the dirt cheap value, I think look pretty good. You can roll the dice on Kabengele as well, hoping you get 20 to 22 minutes, but that's more of a large field play. And then Isaac Okoro, I think, is actually kind of interesting too. He's a little more expensive than I wanted at 4,500 on DraftKings, but his usage rate without Garland and Drummond actually is almost 17%, which isn't high, but it's like 4 points higher than normal. And I think there's a good chance that you get 36 plus minutes from Okoro tonight because, for one, they need someone to soak up minutes, and for two, he's actually one of the young players that they're looking to develop, so it makes sense for him to play a bunch of minutes. So, again, more of a tournament play, whereas I think looking to at least 2 of basically Wade and whoever starts for Love are cash plays. I think Okoro in tournaments has actually a pretty high ceiling here.
I think so too. Now, from a priority standpoint, I think this is what I want to hit on just a little bit. You even mentioned right before the show, you're like, this is a slate with only 6 games. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but there's so many good plays. And when you're talking about good plays and priority plays, I think we have to differentiate there. But if ownership speaks to you, right, and the boom bust tool speaks to you, there are some priority plays on Cleveland right now, especially against the Pacers that are not a good defense and playing at one of the fastest paces in the league.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that Dean Wade, assuming he starts, is a priority as much as it's going to suck to click on his name. 3,400 on DraftKings. I don't really see a way around it. I think whoever starts out of Dotson, assuming one of Dotson or Thomas starts, again, my guess is Thomas, I guess priority is a little strong, but I do think they're one of the best point per dollar values and their minimum salary, so they open up a lot for you. I think whichever one doesn't start is still a reasonable play, but I wouldn't say priority. On FanDuel, I think Colin Sexton's a priority. He's only 7,500 at shooting guard. Shooting guard's not a very good position tonight, and you're getting a sizable discount on Sexton, who's likely to play 36 plus minutes and has a 30% usage rate and 30% assist percentage without Drummond and Garland on the floor this year.
Eric just came to the realization that we're dangerously close to 1,000 likes already. Like, it's happening. It is absolutely happening. We're getting the 1,500. Oh man, just close out of this, Eric. This is a bad sweat. It's a bad sweat that's going to end in disaster. It's going to be, you're sitting in first place and some random scrub that's like 2% owned ends up hitting a home run in extras, and it knocks you out of the top 15. It's just going to be that feeling, but to this, it might be even worse.
My comparison is the Bale's push-up sweat, where like I don't know if you bet on it, but I bet way more than I should that he wouldn't be able to do however many push-ups it was. And so you're watching it and you're just like, you're kind of hoping that he dies or like tears something, but like but you're watching it and like he like starts to look tired, like
wouldn't you?
he like starts to look tired halfway through and you're like, all right, maybe I'm live, maybe I have a chance. And then he just like comes back and goes like full steam. So like you're going to get this like little lull in likes and Eric's going to get excited. And then either the end of our show or like the beginning of the Live Before Lock show, it's just going to like go straight through 1,500.
Right. And we're just going to keep building audience too.
Right.
Like there's even through Live Before Lock, it's just going to keep being more and more and more. I will shave my face completely if we get to 1,500, but I got stuff to do this weekend. So on Monday's show, I will come back completely shaven, looking like an absolute buffoon if we get there. Eric, that's for you, fella. That's for you. Because there's no incentive for me to do this at all.
Yeah, I'm not as nice a guy, so I'm going to just keep my facial hair.
I'm not even nice. I just think it makes it more interesting. It makes things fun, you know? Spices it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Anything else for Cleveland?
No, I think that's about it. Like, I would say that you could make I think they're all in play. It's just, you know, they're all in play in large field tournaments. As you get smaller field, you're looking at Sexton and Allen, you know, as both being strong plays. Sexton especially strong on FanDuel. Okoro as, you know, a reasonable contrarian play, and I think Wade and whoever starts in Love's place as priority value options.
1,000 likes. We're there, baby. Oh my God, we got an hour and a half to go. The Pelicans and Memphis Grizzlies, this is a spot that I talked to Josh about this morning that I kind of had a tough time with. I'll tell you why and bounce it off you and get your opinion, right? They're 9.5-point dogs, 229 total. Now, the Grizzlies have been playing better lately. I feel like they're finally kind of putting themselves in play. They're stepping up into playoff mode. The Pels have no Zion, presumably for the rest of the year. Brandon Ingram's out. Steven Adams is questionable or doubtful, sorry. But they're not really pulling a lot of ownership. Like Jackson Hayes has been playing great basketball off the bench, played 24 and 26 minutes respectively over his last two games. Eric Bledsoe's getting single-digit ownership right now. Once we get an update, we'll be able to tell you where he comes in at. But he's played 40 and 33 minutes over his last two, coming off a huge points, assist, double-double last time out. Shot volume is clearly up, almost 40 combined field goal attempts over his last two games. Lonzo only played 30 last game. But prior to that, played 34. Am I wrong to say that there might be some opportunities here, or are all of these ownership projections looking like they should be where they are, even with the two top usage players out for the Pelicans?
I think that there's basically secondary plays from New Orleans. So I think the ownership being relatively low makes sense. And the reason is mostly that the prices have started to elevate on this team. You know, Lonzo is up to 8K. He wouldn't really be considered at 8K if Ingram or Zion were in. Bledsoe's up to almost 6K. Even James Johnson at 4,600 and Najee Marshall at 5K. You know, there's still the potential for them to do well, but they're pretty much priced where they should be. And you also have to keep in mind that Nickeil Alexander-Walker returned to action last night. So while I only expect him to play around 22 minutes like he did last night, he does kind of lower the minutes floor for guys like Marshall and Johnson. He closed over Marshall last night. You know, potentially you could see him at times close over Johnson, you know, not directly, obviously, but with everyone sliding down a position. So it makes it a little bit riskier to go to those guys. And then at center, you're still basically playing the guessing game of who gets the minutes between Jackson Hayes and Willie Hernangomez. The lineup that won the big DraftKings tournament last night actually had both of them, which I think is a really bad strategy at these price points, but it worked out. And it just goes to show, how much upside each of these guys have. So I think individually they're still high upside plays, but they're also priced to the point where they're not necessarily the best options. Now that you have $5,700 Hernan Gomez, you have $4,500 Hayes, and to some extent, whoever's playing better is going to get the majority of the minutes. So I think there's a lot of guys on the Pelicans that are reasonable plays, but I don't think there's any one in particular that I point to and say, I expect this guy to be in my top lineup.
Okay, fair enough. I do like Bledsoe today. I'll be honest with you. I think Bledsoe's in a decent enough spot. I don't know how much of a priority he is, but if he ends up in some lineups, I really have no issues with that whatsoever. I think assuming he gets the minutes and the usage, I don't have an issue with his price point. I don't think he's a priority, but I do think that someone's going to have to do something for the Pels tonight with their two top guys out.
Yeah, Bledsoe's a fantasy point per minute guy without Ingram and Zion this year. And you're assuming he's going to play 32, 33 minutes or so. So, he projects to me as a good play. It's just a slate where there's a lot of guys where I'm just like, man, I'm really excited to get this guy in my lineup. Bledsoe doesn't quite get there for me.
For sure. And that's fair. What about with Memphis? Grayson Allen's out, but this has been a team that, and countless times we said, just they run a very deep rotation. But there are still some good players on this team, and they're getting some ownership. So across sites, it's a little bit different because Joe Val and Moran are both 82 plus 100 on DraftKings, but it could be a little bit different on FanDuel for us today.
Yeah, the pricing on FanDuel definitely looks better. I mean, you have Morant at, I think, 7,200. You have Jaren Jackson at 500 less than he is on DraftKings. Valanciunas is a little bit less expensive. But even on DraftKings, I think this is a team you can look to, especially in tournaments. Valanciunas should absolutely destroy this New Orleans front court, assuming Steven Adams, who is doubtful, sits. And you've actually seen Valanciunas play at least 30 minutes in 4 of the last 5 games. The only game that he didn't was because he fouled out in 20 minutes. He played 36 minutes against the Raptors last game. I don't anticipate 36 minutes again, but it's nice to know that it's at least on the table for a guy that averages almost 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. I think he's very similar to Clint Capella, where they both average almost 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. They both average about 30 minutes per game, but occasionally they'll top that. You've seen Valanciunas topping it more recently than Capella has. And I think that this just sets up, I mean, he should not have any trouble going up against Jackson Hayes or Willie Hernan Gomez here. So I like Valanciunas. I like Jaren Jackson, who started last game, played 26 minutes. He didn't close, which on one hand is concerning because does it mean that even as a starter, they're capping him at 26 minutes? But DeAnthony Melton poured in 15 actual points in the fourth quarter and played the entire quarter. So like if he's not knocking down every single 3 he takes, do they take him back out and put Jackson in? I think there's a good chance you get 28 to 30 minutes from Jackson here, which makes him a reasonable value. We know Dylan Brooks can get hot from 3. New Orleans encourages guys to shoot 3s against them. So that sets up pretty nicely. And then again, Morant on DraftKings, I think will be tough to get to, but 7,200 on FanDuel, he's been playing more minutes lately, coming off a game where he played north of 36 minutes. 7,200, he shows up in a lot of my top lineups on FanDuel.
Okay. Anybody else from Memphis, or do you want to move on to Milwaukee and San Antonio?
Yeah, I'm good going to the Milwaukee.
All right, let's talk about Milwaukee first. They are big favorites here, 7 points. Not huge favorites, but 7-point road favorites, 233.5 total. What we talked about last time out, we got into a pretty in-depth conversation about what's going to happen with Giannis, and kind of my fears became reality to some extent, that Budenholzer gave him less than 29 minutes in a game that Houston actually kept relatively close, cut the lead to 7 points towards the end of that game, and he just still kind of wasn't needed. We hit the under 28.5 points there, cruised to that. We also cruised above the DeLon Wright assist total and the Mo Bamba 11.5 rebounds. Not only did we hit that, but Adam, we hit that in the first half. So that felt good. 13 in the first half for Mo Bamba rebounds. We'll go back to the well today with a couple of these props, but with Giannis, I'm just kind of worried right now that they might be in cruise control against less than stellar teams.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And they got him out of that game as quickly as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Which really I was disappointed by. I had him at like 10% owned, and he was playing. And then, yeah, they took him out at like 29 minutes. It was, I think, like a 10-point game with 4 minutes to go. And they were like, yeah, okay, we're good. So yeah, that's a legitimate concern, but I think that's still sort of baked into his average numbers. I mean, we've seen, not to the extent that we did in the past. But we've seen, Milwaukee still is involved in a lot of blowouts, and that keeps his average playing time down. Whereas in competitive games, typically you're getting like 35 plus minutes from him. So I don't think he's as good a play as Westbrook, because you're likely giving up at least 3 or 4 minutes, if not even more, depending on how those games go. Curry, we know, is probably going to play a couple minutes more than Giannis on a lot of occasions. If Brogdon is out, or even if he's not, Sabonis is probably playing more minutes than Giannis. So I think it's really tough to say, he's like the guy that I'm paying up for, but he still averages 1.75 DraftKings points per minute. So there's still a very high ceiling, because again, we could just be completely wrong and he could play 37 minutes tonight if it's a close game. It's not a foregone conclusion that he's limited to 30 minutes or something like that. So, I think that there are risks. I think that'll probably be reflected in ownership. I think that expecting around 33 or so minutes for him is very reasonable.
Okay. Is there anyone really else, though, with the prices on Milwaukee right now that we can look at as a quality option today against the Spurs?
It's really tough for me to see anything else. You've just gotten, rising price tags on Holiday and on Middleton. Even DiVincenzo at 5,200 doesn't really stand out to me on this slate, even though he's likely to play 28 to 30 minutes. I don't see a whole lot from Milwaukee, despite them having 120 point implied total.
What about San Antonio against Milwaukee? I think both of these teams, at least on a slate with so many good plays, are coming in pretty underwhelming from an ownership perspective. San Antonio on both sides, the highest owned player is around 15%.
Yeah, I think the pricing on San Antonio is a little bit better. Like, I still don't think that you end up prioritizing DeMar DeRozan or DeJounte Murray, but when you look to the mid-range guys, there's at least, on a slate like this, if you're going to mid-range guys, they need to be able to get 50 plus points. Not saying they need to project there, but they need to at least, be players where it's not the most surprising thing if they get there. And Murray and DeRozan both give you that. They both are probably playing 34 or 35 minutes if the game's close. You should get 1.2 DraftKings points per minute on average from DeRozan. Murray's around 1.1, and it is a pace-up spot, even though Milwaukee's a solid defensive team. So I can see getting to either of those guys. Even Jakob Poeltl at 5,200, probably playing 30 to 32 minutes, is reasonable. And then Keldon Johnson's down at 4,400. I hate talking about this guy because he seems to just always disappoint, but even if he averages around 0.75, 0.8 DraftKings points per minute since the All-Star break, if he plays 28 to 30 minutes at 4,400 in a pace-up spot, that's not a bad score. So these are guys, DeRozan, Murray, Poeltl, Johnson, even Lonnie Walker starting, or assuming he starts. They're guys where they kind of help round out a lineup, or they can be used as contrarian plays, but I don't really see any of them as guys that are making their way into my first lineup, or guys that, I'm overly excited when I see them in a lineup.
We are at 1,100. We have 400 likes to go before those eyebrows disappear as well. Oh boy, it's happened. I think we get to 400 by the end of this show in 19 minutes, but we'll still have another hour after that. Made the mistake of saying I would shave my face. I'm not shaving my eyebrows, but I'll shave my whole face. It'll come back on Monday, look like a goof. I would like us not to get there, quite frankly. Now, when we close out San Antonio and Milwaukee, do you think there's any like low-key contrarian stack value in a game like this, or just not really set up that way, even if you're trying to be different on a somewhat abbreviated slate?
I think it's really tough on a slate like this, because if you stack, assuming you're saying, 5-6 guys or something from this game, you're just giving up so much, I think, in terms of all the value, or some of the value, at least from Cleveland, in terms of, probably Westbrook, or, at least Westbrook, one of Westbrook Young. You have the Houston-Portland game, which is, has a really wide spread, but could very easily be competitive and shoot out. There's a lot of games on this slate that have the potential to be really, really high scoring. So I think allocating so much to this game is kind of tough to get behind.
Okay. So we got 2 left to go. I would never welch, Jeffrey. I'm just saying I wouldn't mind if it didn't happen. Come on now. Utah and Golden State, the Warriors at home against the Jazz. 2-point dogs. Should be a competitive affair, fun one to watch. 225.5 total. But the Jazz will once again be without Donovan Mitchell, at least for the coming days, and without Mike Conley. So with the Utah Jazz, some of the prices I don't think are all that crazy. Golden State plays at a fast pace. I think just having Curry right now puts them in a position where they might be able to keep up with Utah here. What are you doing with guys like Joe Ingles, whose price has actually come down almost $1,000 over his last handful of games?
Yeah, I think Ingles is one of the best small forward options tonight, especially on Fanduel where you have to roster two of them. He's averaged 31 minutes per game in the games he's played without Conley and Mitchell, but he's averaged about 1.08 DraftKings points per minute, has a 35% assist percentage. And one thing that I think makes this game very appealing for Utah, actually two things. One, Golden State plays at a fast pace. But two, Utah's one of these teams where when you look at the average playing time for a lot of their guys this season, it's lower than you would expect because they've been involved in so many blowouts. This game only has a 2-point spread last I checked. One of the lowest spreads on the slate, and Golden State, especially without Oubre, they play really, really, really well. So this is a game that's likely to stay close, likely to be relatively high scoring with like a 226 total. I think that you're seeing pricing, especially in the case of Ingles, come down a little bit, but this is a game where you could easily see him get 33 or so minutes and average over a fantasy point per minute. So never someone you're going to be super excited about because it's Joe Ingles, but you have seen the assist percentage really increase without Mitchell and Conley. I think he's a very strong small forward option.
All right. Brogdon's out. Lamb is out. If we just revisit that for a moment here to recap where you were at earlier in the day, what do you do with a priced up Sabonis and LeVert, both who have been playing spectacular basketball lately?
Yeah, they both entered the conversation in tournaments. I still would have, I'm not putting Sabonis ahead of Westbrook. I think he's in the conversation now with like Giannis and Curry and that like next tier down of pay up options because he should play huge minutes. And like I said, he's averaged 1.64 DraftKings points per minute in his starts without Brogdon and Turner. Cleveland shouldn't be able to do much to slow him down defensively. So I do think Sabonis looks very good. And then LeVert, it's still going to be tough there because he doesn't give you quite as much production as Sabonis does. And he's in that price range where he's still competing with Lillard. He's competing with Young. He's competing with Sexton. He's competing with, CJ McCollum against Houston. It's still kind of tough, but the ceiling at least is higher without Brogdon. So he's still a better tournament play now than he would be if Brogdon were in.
Okay. Back to Utah then. Let's spend a little bit of time on this outside of Ingles. I agree with you. I like Joe Ingles today. One might call him Jingles. But Clarkson's price has now come up to a point where it's a little bit tough to get him. $7,700 on DraftKings, $7,400 on FanDuel, maybe a little bit more palatable, but still not getting a ton. Gobert is sub 8K on FanDuel, though. I think that's worth talking about, particularly against this, what I would consider to be an underwhelming Golden State front court, particularly at the center position right now from a rebounding standpoint as well. Do you think Gobert has some merit, or there's some merit to rostering Gobert below 7K or 8K today?
Yeah, I do. I think he's very similar to Valanciunas and to Capella in terms of expectation. Not really that dissimilar from Yusuf Nurkic either, who we'll talk about. But Gobert's certainly one of the guys included in what I was saying, where he averages like 30 or 31 minutes per game for the season. But in a lot of competitive games, you've seen 33, 34 minutes from him. He averages about 1.3 DraftKings points per minute, and it is a pace-up spot against Golden State. So I think
he's the quietest 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy in the league.
Yeah, it's crazy because I mean he's even with like Mitchell out, the usage rate jumps to 18%, which is still obviously low, but he's also one of the most efficient scorers, so that helps. And then the rebounding rate is between 23 and 24%. You get blocks as well, so yeah, he looks very good. I have a very hard time like differentiating him from Capella and Valanciunas, where they're all priced about the same.
Okay, Jordan, give me the actual tally on likes right now. Need to get to 1,500. Anything else from Utah that you want to touch on that we haven't gotten to yet?
Yeah, Bojan Bogdanovic is playing big minutes with those guys out, but he also has almost a 30% usage rate in the games that Mitchell and Conley haven't played. He's as scoring dependent as they come. His assist percentage is below 10%. His rebounding percentage is below 10% in those games, averaging 4 rebounds and 2 assists per game. But he's getting up a bunch of shots. He's averaging almost 34 minutes per game. He's $1,100 less expensive than Clarkson on DraftKings. He is only $6,100 at small forward on FanDuel. I think Bogdanovic still looks like a good option here.
We have hit 1,200, 300 to go. Andrew, no, a face tattoo is just cruel. However, I do have an ass tattoo bet with Josh Engelman. Did you know that?
I did not. I also thought you were about to just tell us you had an ass tattoo, which I didn't.
Zion Williamson, first team all NBA. I say it'll never happen.
What? Oh man, you're getting a tattoo within the next 2 years.
Never going to be first team. Not going to happen. Those knees will give out. Give him a couple of years. But yeah, I mean, maybe it will. I don't know. Never going to see it anyway. So what's the big deal? Like it honestly doesn't bother me. An ass tattoo bothers me very, very little. If that
yeah. It's you literally won't see it.
It'd be a cool story too. When you're drunk, a lot of people are going to see my ass, you know?
Yeah, it's not a. I wouldn't be worried about having an ass tattoo.
No, not at all. Not at all. Depends on what it is, I guess, but it still really doesn't.
Yeah.
Golden State Warriors. Talk to me about Steph Curry. Before you do, though, you and I talked about this bet. We made a bet up, right? And I said, if I gave you even money that Westbrook plays the same Thunder team 5 times in a row, will he finish with 40 or more points in one of those games? Well, he faced OKC in back-to-back games. In the second one, he had 49 points through 3 quarters. So that settles that.
Yeah. He almost did it in 3 quarters. The first game.
That's why the guy that in the chat that was like, I'll give you plus 350 that he finishes with 40 points through 4 quarters. The best bet you'll ever take.
Less than 40 points.
What was it?
It was plus 350 that he finishes with less than 40.
You sure? You sure that's what? Oh yeah. Okay, you're right. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, what are you doing with Curry today?
I still think he looks really good. I mean, the matchup, of course, is tough against Utah, but Curry's just playing out of his mind, and you've seen it all season long when he plays without Oubre. In the 10 games he has played without Oubre and Weissman this year, he has a 41% usage rate. Overall, in his minutes without Oubre, he's got a 37% usage rate. He's got a 69 and change % true shooting percentage. So he's shooting the lights out on increased usage. The offense as a whole is more efficient without Oubre. The assist percentage for Curry is still around 30%. He's averaged 1.7 DraftKings points per minute. Even if you knock some of the per minute production off for this matchup, he still looks like a great option here, especially assuming this game is going to be competitive and you're going to get that full 35, 36 minutes from Curry. So I think he looks really good. He's the one guy from Golden State that stands out to me. I don't have any issues with Draymond Green or Wiggins or, even Jordan Poole if you're playing large field tournaments and looking for a low-owned guy that can score. It seems like he's jumped ahead of Michael Mulder in the rotation again, but Curry's the one guy that just really, really stands out to me here.
Okay. Still no Kelly Oubre. He looked like he was getting close to returning, but that's not the case. Now you're just talking about him being reevaluated in 1 or 2 weeks. So we know that he's sidelined, but I guess once you get past some of these other options, do we have any other? I know you say Curry's the one guy you're looking at, but given that it's a short slate and we still got 10 minutes to go here, making pretty good time, and Houston's just an absolute mess on a 10 p.m. start, and we still don't know what's going on with Olynyk and Christian Wood. Are there any other secondary options that you'd like to plug in or be okay with for Golden State if they landed in your lineups?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with most of the rest of Golden State just because I do think that they're running a pretty tight rotation right now is the thing. Earlier in the year, they were really a pain in the ass because they were just running, 10, 11, sometimes 12 guys. But that's not really the case now. Like Juan Toscano-Anderson's getting 30 minutes off the bench. Jordan Poole in competitive games, I think, is getting 26 or so minutes off the bench. And then you're getting 37, 38 minutes from Wiggins. You're getting 35 or 36 from Green. Bazemore's playing around 30 to 32. So they're running a pretty tight rotation here, and they're still reasonably priced. It's just, Curry's the one that really stands out. But, if I get Draymond Green in some lineups, if I get 37 minutes from Andrew Wiggins, it's not something I'm going to be upset about. Jordan Poole, like I said, has kind of seemingly jumped ahead of Michael Mulder, played about 13 or 14 first half minutes last game, got some garbage run, but I think still was going to play around 26 minutes. Certainly not someone you're prioritizing or putting a large percentage of your money on tonight, but at 4,200, it wouldn't be surprising if you got, 26, 28 fantasy points from Poole.
All right. That's 5 up. We got 1 to go here. If you guys want some free content that's usually behind paywall, our premium content, each day we rotate through some new stuff. We got some great ones today. NBA player rankings, top stacks for MLB, one of the best tools on the site, and NHL main slate and ownership projections. Jordan, what are you eating, Jordan? He's got an absolute mouthful over there. Pull up the Hall of Fame. Let's do this. Let's see what our boy Alex Baker did the other day. Did you see what Awesemo did? In NASCAR?
I saw him tweet like before anything was over. I didn't see how it ended up.
Well, no. I thought NASCAR was over.
I don't think so.
Oh, we'll get to that in a second. Art DZ95, $13,000, rocking the Awesemo avatar. The reason we do this is simple. You see those 3 steps. You want to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Download the avatar at awesemo.com/avatar. Use it. Fanduel, Draftkings, No House Advantage. Doesn't matter where it is. Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. And if you win you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, let us know at Awesemo Hall of Fame on Twitter, at Laffy_D. You want to include me as well. and get your free month. It's $199.95 value just for finishing in the top. And this can be in the nickel, this can be in the quarter, it doesn't matter. Here's another one. We run the nickel over there on Fanduel. Every single night we're taking that down. Another one right here, first place. I took down the nickel 150 max for the second time in the last month. Big shout out to my guys over at Awesemo.com. Another one, quarter jukebox. First, KLD Jr. coming in once again, and second place, Boo 2654. Look, the Awesemo logos everywhere, especially in some of this low stakes stuff. I love it. 50K Haymaker, Big Smoke 91, doing big things. And then we've got Gene B. Kim, who's just on here like 3 times a week. Came pretty close to being it on both sides, but pretty close isn't good enough. Still take a 10K profit. Yeah, you will. Oh, you're right. Okay, so this was the screenshot. Now we got to know where he finished, because it was 200,000. He said, I'm pretty sure, Alex said it. I'm pretty sure he can confirm this. That PGA, he ended up just having like a decent day, but I thought he won that. I'm sorry. I thought he won one of them. I can't even remember. But anyway, that's a cool screenshot. I guess you're right. For some reason, I thought that there was a NASCAR one up there that was 200K to first. Maybe you're right. Maybe he fell out of it. Then he's just trying to trick all of us.
Yeah, I know at one point he posted something about NASCAR being great, and really it was just showing like $250,000 in PGA winnings. But
I guess he tricked me. Well, I'm sure I'll win it again tomorrow. But anyway, if you want to join, use that Awesemo avatar. Be sure to do that. Awesemo.com/avatar. Figure out how to do it and rock it every day of the week. When you come in first through third, 5,000 or more, we'll get you set up with a free pass for the entire month. Everything included. Awesemo ownership, projections, top stack tool, lineup builder, you name it. We got you. All right, let's wrap this one up. Houston and Portland. The Houston Rockets are 14-point dogs against the Blazers, 238 total. I'm just going to turn this over to you because we got 5 minutes before Spags jumps on to the Live Before Lock show with your boy Greg Ehrenberg. And I don't know what to do right now, because if we don't get this news, Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk, if they end up not playing, what the hell are we going to do?
yeah, so this game, you mentioned on the Milwaukee San Antonio game, game stacking a game that, is kind of not the highest owned. If I'm doing that, I'm going to this game. And there's a couple of reasons. For one, it's got the highest total on the slate. It's expected to not be super competitive. It's like a 14.5 point spread. But if it's close, you're probably just getting massive scores from a lot of guys in this game. The other reason is that we don't have really important news on Houston right now, because both Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk are questionable. So if both of those guys play, it's actually a pretty unappealing spot for Houston, because they'd have those two back. You'd have Jayshawn Tate back. You have Daniel House back. You have not Broderick. You have Kyrie Thomas, in the rotation now. So they would actually have like 10 or 11 bodies if those guys come back. But if one or both of those guys get ruled out and you've game stacked this game, you have a lot of roster spots that you can move around. And there's going to be really appealing options here, because you would still, if Olynyk and Wood are both out, you're probably getting 40 minutes from Kenyon Martin Jr. again. You're probably getting like 26 to 28 minutes in a close game from DJ Augustine. You're getting a lot of run for, the other pieces, Lamb and Jeffries and those guys that are not really appealing, but would still be playing a lot of minutes at cheap price tags, Armani Brooks as well. And if only one of Wood or Olynyk is in, whichever one is going to look great, because they're just going to be such a large part of the offense. So I think that there's the potential for there to be very good plays from Houston. It's just really, really tough to nail down right now. And it's really tough to to be too aggressive with your guesses, unless you're plugging in multiple people from this game, because you only have this game and the Golden State game at 10. If you get Houston news between 8:30 and 10, you're very limited in what you can do. So there is the potential for there to be good, relatively low owned plays from Houston if we get late news, or when we get late news. But you're going to need multiple spots available, I think, to be able to late swap to take advantage of it. On the Portland side, I think there's a ton to like here. You have essentially the whole starting lineup, I think, looks good. Damian Lillard, of course, is the starting point. He's reasonably priced, 9,700 on DraftKings. You're expecting, if this game's close, that he plays 36 plus minutes. Averages 1.3 or so DraftKings points per minute with McCollum and Nurkic this year. Has a massive ceiling. McCollum and Nurkic both are less expensive and give you still very high upside access to the Portland offense. McCollum's averaged 1.17 DraftKings points with Lillard and Nurkic. He should play similar minutes to Lillard. Nurkic in competitive games is still playing 29 to 31 minutes. He's extremely productive and should be able to just destroy this Houston front court, especially if Christian Wood is out. So all three of those guys look really good, I think. Norman Powell's only 5,600 on FanDuel. In competitive games, you're getting like 36 minutes or so from him. He's averaged 0.81 DraftKings points per minute since joining Portland when all of their guys have been healthy. So I think it makes sense that he's getting a lot of ownership, especially on FanDuel. Covington, not ever exciting, but with Carmelo Anthony out, you potentially pick up a couple more minutes for him. And, hope that he just runs into some 3-pointers and steals. In larger field stuff, even Enes Kanter at 4,400 on DraftKings, assuming you're going to get 18 to 20 minutes from him, he doesn't even look like a bad option, I don't think. It's certainly not my first choice, but and obviously don't play him with Nurkic, but there is still a path to success for him against a very weak Houston front court. Anthony Simons played 27 minutes last game. I think he benefits from Carmelo Anthony being out. You're probably getting another 23, 24 minutes from him tonight at 3,400. I'm certainly putting the Cleveland value ahead of Simons in terms of chances of success. But if Anthony Simons in 24 minutes beats Broderick Thomas in 28 minutes, does that really surprise anyone? Like, I don't think that it would. And he's obviously going to be lower owned.
Just to circle back to Lillard for a second, because I was looking at our player prop projections. It's a free player prop tool at Awesemo.com. If you want to check that out under the NBA tab, you don't have to pay for a thing ever, not just today. We have Damian Lillard's prop line at 28.5. We have him projected at 30.55 here. It's kind of interesting because Dame Lillard, and you've said this, just could any spot you could be looking at him to go insane. Especially when you're not getting much ownership on him. He's 19% projected ownership. We just got a new updated ownership like 30 seconds ago too over at Awesemo if you're a premium sub. 19% on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, Dame's coming in at a slightly less price point, 9,500 at 25%. Is that something you want to get above or under today, just given the fact that we have Westbrook, we have Curry, you have Trae Young, who's cheaper, and you also have Sabonis, who will no longer have Malcolm Brogdon to contend with for touches?
I think you said 25 on DraftKings?
25 on FanDuel right now, and on DraftKings around 18.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that seems, I think, about right. The one thing, like when I think about it in my head, like how I would probably approach it if I were making like one lineup and trying to get access, like get exposure to Portland, but still not be, too far off the board. I think that going to McCollum makes a ton of sense because shooting guard's nowhere near as strong as point guard. So like you can get that Westbrook Young pairing that we talked about at point guard and then still get someone that has the potential to be the highest scorer on the Blazers and saving, 1,500 to 2K, going to CJ McCollum or even going to Yusuf Nurkic at center. So I think Damian Lillard's a very good play. I don't have any issues with him. I'm not saying not to roster him. I'm just saying, like, when I think about how I would attack one lineup tonight, I think it would involve McCollum or Nurkic before Lillard.
All right. Outside of Westbrook, then we'll turn this one over. Outside of Westbrook, your top high-end play today is?
Either Steph or Sabonis. I need to redo my stuff on Sabonis now, but yeah, it's one of those two.
And is your top value Dean Wade right now, as ugly as it sounds?
My top value might be Russell Westbrook. But other than that, I think it's Wade. Let me see. In terms of cheap guys, it's Wade. All
right. Good stuff. Spamming the chat is not going to help whatsoever. And here we go. Just spamming. See ya, fella.
Tony Snell out, DeAndre Hunter in.
Yeah, that's what he was spamming about the Hunter news. Does it change anything? Does it make an impact?
And Garrison Matthews starting for Washington. I don't really care.
Yes, sir. We got Spags and Greg coming up next. You guys have been awesome. We got about 2,800 people watching. If you're wondering, looking down, saying, oh my God, we got almost 1,300 likes. That's because Eric Lindquist is shaving the brows off. If we get to 1,500 by the end of this show, it is a foregone conclusion. It's inevitable at this point. 1,500 likes, and it's happening. I will also be shaving my face, which I haven't done since I was a young child, maybe around 18, 19 years old. So it's going to be fun. Maybe we won't get there. Who knows? Anyway, turning it over to these boys. Thanks for hanging out as always. And
if we don't get there, Spags should have to shave something at this point.
Yeah, oh yeah, Spags is going to have to do something. Spags, I will leave it to you to come up with something to join the club since you're the one that has me pushing this nonsense. We'll see you back here shortly on the Deeper Dive. Good luck tonight, everybody. Thanks for watching.
See you guys.
What is up, guys? You got yourselves 55 minutes left to lock today on all the sites that you'll be playing on. And we are here for that home stretch to talk about any late-breaking news that will inevitably crush all of our lineups and the assumptions that we made going into this. But I am Chris Spags for one more hour today, joined by a man who I saw, it feels like a lifetime ago, but he's back again. He's Greg Ehrenberg. How you doing, Greg?
Doing good, probably better than you, a little more refreshed. But hey, I mean, I hope that a couple of things. I hope that you're getting your proper due for doing what is it, 6 shows today or something like that. But even more importantly, we have to get Eric Lindquist more followers on Twitter. This is a man who, for no reason, is just telling people I'll shave my eyebrows with zero gain for myself just for a few likes on a YouTube video. Like, let's get him more. He has like almost no followers on Twitter. Go follow @Eric Lindquist on Twitter. Let's at least get him something for shaving his eyebrows here, because we're gonna crush the 1,500 likes today.
Well, you know what we can get him, Greg, is a tour around OddsShopper.Awesemo.com, where he can find for himself some of the best bets and prop betting, all updated in real time, along with the futures bets, the spread bets from all the books that are legal around you. And that is something you can do for yourself every single day to help your process out, whether it be to hedge against your DFS stakes, a double down on guys like Russell Westbrook. If you're for some reason not getting enough of him in DFS today and you want to go to the prop bet markets, you can go do that for yourself at OddsShopper.com or OddsShopper.Awesemo.com. Make sure you are playing along with OddsShopper every single day, because it is a big part of your process here for profitability. And some of the tools on there, the win percentage and ROI percentage tools for the NBA in particular, are going to be a big asset for all of you guys out there. So make sure you're checking out OddsShopper.com or OddsShopper.Awesemo.com. And today, free on the site, our free premium tool is the player rankings. So not quite the player projections, but a good view on the slate, which could be helpful for you guys if you're thinking about buying membership and just want to see how it works out. Go check out the player rankings for free today on the site, our free premium tool of Awesemo Plus, and make sure to go check out all the packages available to you at awesemo.com/join, and go follow at Eric Lindquist. As Greg said here, we do want to support our boy, who is now looks like about 200 likes away from having to shave one of his eyebrows for a bet that he made really with himself on the tip-off. Wasn't even Kayla nor I contributing in any way. Eric just all of a sudden chimed in, said, I think he was mad at my bit creation. I don't even know what it was, but whatever it did led to Eric offering up to shave his eyebrows for 1,500 likes. And I know he's a man of his words. So smash that like button now, get us to 1,500 likes. So we don't even have to think about it during the show. And also the added bonus, if you're not a fan of our pal Josh Engelman, I'm filling in for him today because he's having a lovely anniversary trip with himself and his wife. And nothing would be better for Josh to return to A, to do a live before lock tomorrow with Eric with no eyebrows. B, for Josh to know the likes record got smashed with him having nothing to do with it. So there are now 2 reasons for you to hit that like button. And both of them hurt our coworkers. So that's the main thing, Greg, that you and I care about the most.
Which is that even the likes record though? Like haven't we had shows where we've gotten over 2,000?
It's the live before lock / like deeper dive, the combined stream likes record. I don't know if there's another video out there that has it, but I'm going to pretend like this. I'm set the record for shows in a day and we're setting the likes record. I think we're just a record breaking channel right now today.
It's just the time of the season. I mean, what's more exciting than end of season NBA DFS? We also got eyebrow shaving and likes records set on videos and appearances records. This is what the really just Russell Westbrook stat accumulating at its best.
Yeah, Lofty saying we've crushed 1,500 for NFL streams. Yeah, that's the NFL. The NBA streets, though, you guys know how it is. Anybody can get all those pile-up stats in the NFL, that glory hog liga we have. But here in the NBA, you got to earn every single like. So hit that like button, gets to 1,500. And I guess Lofty will shave his face, too, which, Greg, you're a clean-shaven guy. I don't know about how you feel about the stuff. If you ever had facial hair at any point in your life, but shaving that beard and not knowing what's going to be underneath, terrifying prospect, where I know for me, if I shave this off, you'd be like, boy, Spags has a much fatter face than I realize. And that's, I don't know if Lofty's going to have to face that conundrum for himself too.
Oh, we're about to find out because we are at, well, it's hard to tell because I just have the YouTube open and it says 1,400 likes, but it doesn't give the exact number, but I assume we're in the neighborhood of 1,500 right now.
Yeah, so just hit that like button. We'll get there in no time flat. Let's talk about the slate, though. And I feel like the first thing that we have to talk about here, I guess, let's talk about the Cavs news, because that was one that came in a little bit later. And we do have some starters for the Cavs did come through in the transition there between shows. The Cavs starters today going to be Damian Dotson, Colin Sexton, Okoro, Wade, Allen. So no surprises there, I guess, besides Damian Dotson. And Dotson now, as a result, it looks like from Awesemo projecting for a bit of an increase in minutes here, projecting now for 25 minutes flat at the minimum salary on DraftKings. And this is one part we're going to talk about Dean Wade. He's been sort of a known commodity throughout the day. But Greg, getting this news about Dotson, is he a guy you're willing to jam in there? Because we have seen time and again, these minimum salary guys getting starter run. That can sometimes be all you need.
Yeah, I actually have him quite a bit. I have him playing quite a bit more than 25 minutes. He's made 6 starts this year. He's averaging 36 minutes per game in those starts. He's only played under 30 minutes in one start the entire season. That was a game where they lost to Orlando by 20 points. And he played 29 and a half minutes. The other starts for Dotson this year, he has played 35, 41, 37, 31, and 40 minutes. So, I mean, to me, I think Dotson now is probably the best overall value play on the slate based on what we've seen from him as a starter. I mean, massive minutes and averaging 26.92 DraftKings points in his starts this season.
Yeah, I think I agree. The 25-minute projection does seem a little bit on the conservative side, though. There are some other ways I guess they can go, though. You're not going to have Lamar Stevens in there, another guy that you'd assume they want to give minutes to. I think the assumption here might be Broderick Thomas getting bigger run, and I would say it's the direct pivot point as well. Broderick Thomas projected for 24.9 minutes from Awesemo compared to the 25.2 for Dotson. And I guess Broderick Thomas, a guy who really hasn't produced very much on a fantasy level and doesn't have the track record of Dotson either, who we know has had some big days as a Nick in the past, had some okay days as a Cav as well. But Broderick Thomas, I think, to me, the direct minutes point or minutes pivot rather for Damian Dotson. Are you willing to get to him too, or is it mostly you're confident enough in Dotson that you don't need to get there?
So I have exposure to both, but I have far more Dotson than Thomas. So the issue with Thomas has been, number one, the minutes haven't been there this year. And we saw him make one start earlier in the year. He played 31 minutes. He was massive chalk that game. He ended up scoring 18 DraftKings points. And just looking through his box score, he's only eclipsed 20 fantasy points once the entire season. That was last game. It was in a blowout. He ended up playing 23 minutes. He scored 21.75 DraftKings points. But still, for the year, the minutes haven't been there for Thomas. And when he gets on the court, he doesn't really do all that much with them. Playing 10 minutes per game this year, 7 DraftKings points in those minutes. So he's in my player pool because I think he stands to gain extra minutes just with all the guys that are out right now for the Cleveland Cavaliers. You mentioned that Lamar Stevens is out. We also have Kevin Love's out, Chetty Osman's out, Isaiah Hartenstein's out, Darius Garland's out, and that's in addition to Windler, Larry Nance Jr., Taurean Prince, Matthew Dellavedova. So thin rotation today for sure for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Broderick Thomas to me is worth a little bit of exposure, except Dotson is by far the preferred option.
Yeah, I think I will get comparable amounts of both guys. I would prefer to go to Dotson just because he is minimum salary, and sometimes that little bit of a price difference can matter. But I would agree that I think Broderick Thomas, to me, the main upside that he has is contributing a little more in the way of peripherals. He hasn't been a great shooter so far in the league, and Dotson has, again, in the past been able to contribute more in terms of scoring, in terms of assists, a little bit in the way of rebounding. Whereas Thomas, I think that the minutes, to me, seem a little bit less secure. Obviously, he's not starting, but he should get a good amount of run. So to me, if you want to pivot to Dotson, I think that is going to be one that would not surprise me at all. The rest of the Cavs, though, Greg, we have Dean Wade, who I feel like we have to hit on up top. 3,400 on DK. On FanDuel will actually be pretty chalky too as a value play, though you sometimes get away without cramming in guys like Dean Wade on a FanDuel compared to DraftKings, where he'll be 42% owned. That said, he's chalk on both sites, and it does seem like the run of minutes here. Awesemo has been for over 35 minutes today, and you're getting the benefit here of no Kevin Love. He started last game with just no Osman. So now theoretically, you're getting the production of a couple of people combined, rolling up into one for Dean Wade. How are you handling him? Because he's less unavoidable, I think, than he looked earlier in the day, but still a guy that, getting 35 minutes at his price tag, it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point there. Massively different on FanDuel versus DraftKings for me, although he's still a very strong play on both sites. And I really, in honor of Eric right here, I should just say I'm eating a lot of the chalk today because Dean Wade, once again, projects so well for me on a points per minute basis that I find it pretty hard to stay away from him. He's made 15 starts this year. In those starts, he's playing 30 minutes per game and averaging 22.63 fantasy points. And now we're probably giving him somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 more minutes than that. So you just give him those minutes, and now all of a sudden you're looking at 25, 26 fantasy points for Dean Wade, and at a close to min salary, that's pretty hard for me to avoid. So he's somebody else who's a core piece of my lineups. I prefer Dotson to Dean Wade, except both guys to me are excellent value plays.
All right. Also, I am seeing now the chat was saying that we had passed 1,500, and I was still seeing us just shy, but it does look like we did pass 1,500. So our pal Eric Lindquist will have to pay off his bet, and you can look out, I would guess, for his new look coming up on tomorrow's shows. So make sure to tune in to the tip off, where he's also paying off another bet. Poor Eric really finding a way to get us talking about him on all the shows without me just doing a silly impression of him.
Yeah, which, by the way, if this was his end goal, he's really diverted. If his wish is that you don't do the impression of him anymore, maybe you drop it. And just his new thing is that he doesn't have eyebrows. But yeah, I think we should continue to bet with him on shows because he's terrible at wagering.
It's funny because he's so sharp with the NBA. Really, every sport that I talk about Eric with, I'm always impressed by him. But when it comes up with making up bets on the shows, boy, he's not quite there in a way that I would like him to be. But we appreciate him a bunch. And make sure to follow at Eric Lindquist today as a show of love here for him being willing to sacrifice himself and his poor fiance's happiness in the name of content here. And keep hitting the like button anyway. We appreciate it a bunch. And we'll have some free ownership projections for you guys coming up in 15 minutes here when we do some money time, because live before lock doesn't stop even when we hit our eyebrow thresholds. And apparently we do.
By the way, DFS related news. We have an ownership update with Cavs guys, and something that's pretty interesting to me here. So Dean Wade, obviously super popular. Damian Dotson and Broderick Thomas almost picking up the same exact amount of ownership. Dotson project for 24% ownership on DraftKings and Thomas at 21%. To me, at least how I have these players projected, there should be a much bigger gap between them. I think that Dotson warrants a lot more ownership than Thomas does.
So I have them projected pretty close, though. You're given, how many minutes are you giving Dotson? Because I think that could be the main difference point. 34. So if you're giving Dotson 34, and I presume that you're giving Thomas the other 14 or a little bit more than that?
No. He's still, I'm still giving him 22 minutes, except it's a thin rotation, right? So, I mean, you look at the guards they have available today. It's Jeremiah Martin, Broderick Thomas, Damian Dotson. I guess we could consider Isaac Okoro a forward, and then Colin Sexton. So there aren't that many guys to give minutes to. It's just I have Dotson playing the bulk of them, and then Colin Sexton, and then just the remnants of it go to Broderick Thomas and Jeremiah Martin. So, I mean, to me, with Dotson starting, given the amount of minutes we've seen him log as a starter this year, I feel pretty comfortable saying that I think he's going to play 30 plus minutes, and I feel much less secure in Thomas's minutes because we've never seen him do that before.
Okay, that's a reasonable way to look at it. I think and I think this is going off of Awesemo's projections, which obviously is going to be the foundational point for the ownership that we're going to talk about more and give you guys the top 5 owned plays on DraftKings and FanDuel in 13 minutes here. But Broderick Thomas, to me, looks like he's a 0.81 fantasy point per minute guy in terms of the projections. Dotson a 0.77, and if you give them both, 24 to 25 minutes, I think they come out a lot closer. So that's why the ownership is. But if you're like Greg and you want to take that stand, and I think that's a reasonable stand to take, Greg, like I would agree, if you give him 34 minutes, Dotson would look like a better play. It's just a matter of the confidence level, I think, of that going off. And
wait, how many fantasy points per minute did you say you expect Thomas to be scoring now?
0.81.
Okay. I mean, to me, I think that I thought you said a higher number before, but I mean, once again, for the season, he is playing 10 minutes per game and only averaging 7.13 fantasy points. So, I mean, that's obviously fairly easy math to do from that standpoint, where he's putting up 0.713 fantasy points per minute. So I think 0.81 may be a little high, except also, like I said, I think that Dotson plays more minutes.
Anybody else on Cleveland jumping out to you meaningfully? We got some super chats we have to hit on that our producer Jordan's doing a great job compiling for me, and I appreciate that, Jordan. But we got Jared Allen, we got Colin Sexton here, and Sexton's a guy that on FanDuel going to be very chalky. On DraftKings, I think he's an interesting tournament play to get to. Gets an Indiana team that's playing with a lot of pace and not a lot of defense recently. I think that's a flyer that I don't mind getting to at a price point that's pretty reasonable on DK. And Allen too, I think I'm okay with the Fields ownership. I'll probably get, if not exactly on it, a little bit above it, but Jared Allen should benefit a bit here. It's sort of hard to say he's going to have a gigantic ceiling, but maybe he gets a few more shots up and a few more rebounds as a result of not having Kevin Love in the mix. But any other Cavs jump out to you, Greg, as being high priorities besides the value guys that we've already discussed?
I wouldn't call them high priority. And am I about to mess up somebody's name? But Mfiondu, Kevin
Gelly. Yeah.
Did I come close to getting that right?
I've never heard anybody say his first name out loud. Kevin Gelly, I feel like, is a safe way to go for that.
So he played 23 minutes last game. It was also a blowout situation. He got a lot of running garbage time. We've seen him get extended garbage time run at times this year, but yeah, just a total unknown. And he's somebody, let's see, what is the most recent ownership for him? And this means I'm going to have to search for his name and spell it correctly, but 12% ownership. So, all right, never mind. I'm about even with the field. Earlier, he was very, very low owned. And I thought that he was somebody, if you just wanted to take a chance on an unknown value play for the Cavs, I thought Gelly was somebody to be on, but the field's kind of there now. I think 12% is about appropriate.
And it's also worth pointing out real quickly, the Boom Bust tool, part of the premium features that we have at Awesemo.com. It does look like Dean Wade is still projecting to be under-owned, even though he is one of the chalkier plays on the slate. Awesemo has him today being in the optimal line of 55% of the time, I think, because of positionality, the fact that he does have power forward and center eligibility, I think maybe part of that too, but definitely seems like Dean Wade, even though we talk a lot about good chalk, bad chalk, Dean Wade, not a high fantasy point per minute guy. The trap of the minutes combined with how the slate looks, seems like Dean Wade getting a lot of utility if you are a person out there thinking about fading him. Let's talk about some of these super chats, though, which I think will dovetail with the conversation we have to have about Russell Westbrook. With Zach Anderson asking, could you guys talk me out of playing a very uncomfortable amount of Rui on DK? And Rui's certainly one of the guys that you can play today without Bradley Beal in the lineup for Washington. Playing Atlanta, high combined total game here, where Russell Westbrook is going to be the chalk. But we can talk about the Rui part first here, Greg, where I think he looks not that highly owned on DK or FanDuel. So I would just say to anybody out there who's playing Rui, like, you can get 20% Rui and be well above the field, it looks like. And I think that's fine. I certainly wouldn't consider Rui to be some, 75%, 80% play to get into all those lineups, Greg. But do you feel any differently here about Rui for our guy, who I think that was Zach Anderson? I just closed the window.
Yeah. So like you said, let's see, the most recent run of ownership for Hachimura, only 11% right now. And if you look at his numbers with Beal off the court this year, they've actually been pretty solid. Just the question here is, how many minutes are they going to let Rui play? Because it's been really inconsistent. And even the other day where he was kind of on a minutes restriction, they came out and said like, hey, Rui, no more minutes restriction. And he played 24 minutes that night. So that's definitely a little bit of a concern. But if you look at Rui's numbers for the season, when Beal's off the court, he's second on the team in usage behind Russell Westbrook. We have Rui this year without Beal on the court, 23.4% usage rate, scores 31.34 DraftKings points per 36 minutes. So now it just becomes a case of how willing are you to really take a chance on him with the minutes when they've been, fairly inconsistent over the last 4 games, 22, 28, 31, 35 minutes. I think for the ownership, I think that he's a good gamble to be on. I am a little bit over the field on Rui right now, but I don't have like a super strong lean where like I'm massively, massively different in the field. I'm just a little bit overweight.
Also, I presume this has to be actually Eric's fiance in the chat, Melanie, because if somebody were making up a fake account for his fiance, I think that would be a level of knowledge that I don't expect out of anybody. But I just need to read this out loud. Good thing our couch is so comfortable. That's where you can find Eric Lindquist for the next month until the brow goes back with a peace sign. So that's it's a tough one here for Eric here.
Yeah, well, he was really backed in a corner, had no chance but to make that bet. That was how it went.
Yeah, no chance, but to make that bet. Also, people thinking we want everybody to play Dotson, but they won't play him. I don't want everybody to play Dotson. I said I'll play him with the field, and I think Greg is a little more bullish on him. I'm not sure. People think there's some malicious tendencies rather than us just talking through the take. But Greg, you're going to be playing a lot of Dotson, right? I feel like this. You didn't say anything counterintuitive.
I very aggressively like Damian Dotson today. I said I expect him to play well over 30 minutes. I went over his numbers as a starter this year. They were very strong, and he's min price on DraftKings. Like I think that I think he's the best value on the slate. He's the cheap guy I have the most exposure to right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's the minimum salary I talked about. That's a very big cosign for me generally, that he's going to be open up a lot of opportunity and has dual position eligibility as well on DraftKings. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with Damian Dotson. I feel like sometimes people just want to make everything else be a conspiracy. I know that's very popular right now, but I can tell you here on this show, we are pro Dotson. Just, be reasonable with the ownership. I think he's not a guy to lock in by any stretch. Let's keep going through some of the Washington guys, and we got some super chats as well building up. So we'll get to those, I promise. But got to talk about Russell Westbrook up top here. He's going to be projected for 50% ownership, it looks like, on DraftKings. And as we talked about sometimes on the show, because Westbrook just ends up so illogically highly owned, and, and more logically, if you just love him and you want to get there every day, but relative to how people approach DFS, you could say it's illogical because it's, sort of not accounting for the possibility of outcomes and all of that. But Westbrook is going to be 47% of the ownership projections, could end up being higher. I wouldn't shock me to see him in the high 60s, I think would be my guess, Greg. But Westbrook in this spot has had gigantic rate increases for the most part all year long with Bradley Beal off. Gets closer to 35% usage as opposed to his normal 30% usage. Also gets more in the way of assists, safely above 50% assist rate, which he gets to normally anyway, but still it is there over the rates over the course of the entire season. So how are you approaching Westbrook? It's the big question of the day. DK refuses to raise the price. In fact, they lowered it today. And FanDuel, a bit of a different story, but still looks like a good play on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, what's the situation where Westbrook fails here? It's either he gets injured or the Wizards get blown out. Like, I don't see any other way that he doesn't put up a good fantasy game, because if this game's remotely competitive, Westbrook has to play well. There's no way around it without Beal there. Westbrook is going to play maybe even over 40 minutes in this spot, just because this game is so pivotal for the Wizards' chances to make the playoffs. And if you look at his minutes from the last handful of games, 40, 39, 40, 44, 44 minutes. I know there's overtime games mixed in there, but the point being is that they have no issue with playing Westbrook big minutes. And even more so now when you consider where their spot is in the standings and no Bradley Beal. So I have Russell Westbrook in all of my DraftKings lineups right now. On FanDuel, that's where it's a little more debatable, the amount of exposure you want to get to him, because he's priced all the way up to 12,400. And there's other strong point guard options. On DraftKings, where we have so much value and there's so much flexibility, to me, like I said, unless Westbrook gets hurt or unless the Wizards just get run off the court, he's going to be in the optimal lineup.
So, okay. So I guess then you said you're playing 100% of them on DK?
Yes.
So then do you think that that's like, what's the probability of Washington getting blown off in a way where Westbrook doesn't see his full run then? Because that to me is where I'm willing to come in a little bit under. Like, I'm going to have him at 66% cap today, because he would pop up in 100. And I think you're perfectly fine to do that too. But I think there's a pathway here for Atlanta to blow Washington out. Maybe this is just one game they're willing to throw away. And we've seen Westbrook struggle, really the team struggle overall in games in the past where Westbrook seemed like he would get this alpha dog role, and he got it, but then he only plays 3/4 of run. And that's sort of it. That's my fear of Atlanta, because I think Atlanta's running hot right now, and Washington without Beal, just a much worse team.
So here's a question. How many points would you consider the Hawks to win by for Westbrook to not close the game? Like, how many points do you think they have to be up?
They probably have to be up 20 heading into the fourth, I would guess.
Okay. So I would say it's 5-1, just based on looking at alternate lines at a sports book that I pulled up just now.
Okay. So 5-1 then. So that, I guess, do you feel to me like, and obviously you're playing 100, so that's going to be your take on DK, to be specific. Do you feel like, to me, the 66% is a reasonable cap? Because like, the thing that's going to frustrate me is if he ends up 80% and is good today, and I went too low, and I'm inclined to come in a little bit more low, just because I think there are other ways you can go at point guard and just in general. But I think this is, and then again, in the chat, G the Bully, y'all trying to run people off of Westbrook. We're talking about DFS the way it's supposed to be talked about. Like, you can't treat guys who are this expensive as lock plays.
I just said I'm playing him in 100% of my lineups. Like, what am I supposed to say? Play him in two positions at once?
It's just, I think people expect, like, I would just say to everybody out there, and this is no discredit to anybody, like you're all like smart in your own ways. We're all hopefully smart in our own ways, though. You can always sort of point to people and go no, but for the most part, I have a lot of faith in our community out there. At a certain point, though, like generally with how DFS goes, in a spot where a team is undermanned and maybe they don't have, like Washington's getting into the play-in tournament for the most part, barring some really bad outcomes. Like I think there is a point where you can go, oh, this guy is too highly owned. That's sort of the whole point of DFS. And Greg, I know you're playing 100%, but I think that's something people just have to sort of realize sometimes, that you shouldn't treat people like they're sure things, because nothing, as we've learned time and time again, nothing is ever a sure thing in DFS.
No, and I mean, but Westbrook is about as close to as it comes. So I'm going to bring up his box score. And by the way, I put in the exact odds into an applied odds calculator. So I would say roughly the odds of the Hawks winning by blowout is about 17%. If we're just going to use the Vegas lines, the alternate lines as a guideline, I'd say that's probably fair. So, I mean, with that in mind, I would think that if that is the concern for you, then maybe around 80% would probably be the number that I'd be looking to get at for Westbrook if the blowout is the main concern. But I mean, you just look at his games as of late. And number one, the price is so far from accurate on DraftKings, and the fact that they lowered his price after Beal got hurt, it was just really silly. I joked about it on Twitter that they were going to do it, and then they actually did it, which is just totally ridiculous. But here's the games where he's failed recently. He had 51 fantasy points in a game against the Cleveland Cavaliers, but that was a game that was decided by 30 points.
And very low pace too. So that's
they scored 122 points. But the real issue there was just, it was a 30-point game, and he only played 31 minutes, which is crazy, but 31 minutes is well below what I would normally expect from Russell Westbrook at this point in the season. Then there was a close game against the Cavs where he hurt his ankle, and he was listed as questionable for the next game. He scored 40 fantasy points in that game. And by the way, I don't even know if we consider 51 fantasy points a total fail, but
it wasn't the optimal that day. I remember that one.
Yeah,
but, that's
but
not a fail.
He's probably been in the optimal over the last month in what, 85, 90% of the games he's played, like without a joke, not even exaggerating either. I mean, he scored north of 60 fantasy points in almost every single game over the last 2 months now or something.
Okay. No, I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. The Cleveland games are the one that's jumped out to me. And I, again, very much vividly remember him not being in the optimal for one of those. And, I think the one concern that I have is you have Steph Curry in a tournament spot where going against Utah is certainly going to clamp down as much as a team can, but he is still there as a pivot play that could sort of have a comparable upside at a bit cheaper. There's also just the ability to pay down more and go to and I don't think, and I know people in the chat were debating this earlier, I don't think Colin Sexton has the ceiling of Russell Westbrook relative to his price point. If he gives you 60 fantasy points, that could be as good as 65 from Westbrook. And that would be one of my concerns. But I think, these are just concerns. We have to talk about the stuff as sort of an intellectual exercise. And I think people out there maybe sometimes don't get that. It's not that we're saying a guy's a bad player or a good play. It's that it's all about your overall construction of your lineups. And I think that's where you have to make your own decisions for Westbrook, especially on FanDuel. Let's do the ownership here for money time. Let me make sure that we got a recent enough one, though. There haven't been any injuries that are going to change it too much 4 minutes ago. So let's flip the hat. If we got some cash register sound effects, Jordan, please bring them out now. We got the top 5 owned plays on DraftKings for you guys. And of course, you can always get them for yourself at awesemo.com/join. But today, I'll give you guys the top 5 for free. Russell Westbrook, 46% on DraftKings is the projected ownership. Again, won't be surprising to see it be higher. Dean Wade, 43.4%. Number 2 on DK. Damian Dotson, now number 3 at 30%. Jared Allen, number 4, 22%. And Damian Lillard, number 5 at 21%. Greg, to close the loop on Dotson real fast. If he's 30% owned, does that change your perspective at all?
No. Let me see the full. What was Broderick Thomas at now?
Broderick Thomas, let's see. He came down. He is down to 12%.
Okay. So now so what that's going to do for me is I'm going to try to get Broderick Thomas into a little bit more lineups, because before
sorry, I misspoke. That was on FanDuel. He's 18% on DK.
Okay. Yeah, that's about reasonable then. I'm slightly overweight to the field on Broderick Thomas. But still, I think the ownership on Dotson's too low. And also, like I said, I think he's a better value play than Dean Wade.
Top 5 on FanDuel. Number 1 is Dean Wade at 40%. Number 2, Colin Sexton at 34%. Number 3, Russell Westbrook at 28%. Number 4, Norman Powell, one guy who stands out in an interesting way here, 28%. And number 5, Trae Young at 26%. Greg, on FanDuel, this top 5 here with Wade, Sexton, Westbrook, Powell, and Trae Young, does anybody stand out as being perhaps a little bit undeserving of that chalk ownership?
Not real. I mean, I think Powell is a little bit too high. I understand why, except that game against Houston, especially this time of year, we've seen so many blowouts. And I know we've said a bunch of times that we try not to predict blowouts, even though we just did say what are the percentage odds of the Hawks blowing out the Wizards today. There have been a lot of blowouts this time of year, and it's the point where it's hard to ignore. The Oklahoma City Thunder have gotten blown out in almost every single game they've played in over the last 6 weeks now, to the point where it's now their last, what is it, like 20 games? They have an average point differential. They're losing by 20 points. And the Houston Rockets are not that far behind. And then it's also going to depend, are Kelly Olynyk and Christian Wood going to play? If both of those guys are out today, it is really hard to imagine that the Rockets are likely to keep that game competitive. So that's a game where I feel a lot more confident in saying that has a high chance of being a blowout than the Hawks Wizards game.
Let's talk about that. Actually, well, we got a bunch of super chats to get to here, so hang on, guys, because just want to make sure we're covering the slate as best we can before we dig into everybody's individual questions, because sometimes they're not always relevant to the whole group. But Houston, how are you approaching this situation? Because as Greg mentioned, we do have Christian Wood and Kelly Olynyk both questionable right now. Either guy being out would make the other guy look more appealing, I think, in particular for Olynyk, who does a good amount of playmaking, but also both guys being out would open up a ton of minutes. You'd see Kenny Martin Jr. at the 5 a little bit more. You would see more secure run for Kyrie Thomas, who's been a monster so far in his limited sample size of run, 2 games played for them. How are you approaching Houston? Because I know we talk a lot about late swapping, and it does seem like maybe trying to get a handful of Rockets in the hopes that somebody's out is the move, or just getting guys from the late games. Just how are you trying to tackle it in terms of your approach?
Yeah, I have placeholders in my lineups. I have some exposure to Olynyk right now. I have some exposure to Christian Wood. It's going to suck if both of them play, because that's going to make kind of everybody there unappealing. But for me right now, I don't know what to make of it, right? And I don't know how I can know what to do with it when the 2 most important players on the team from a fantasy standpoint are both questionable. And even if Christian Wood plays after missing the last 3 games, I don't know if he's going to have any sort of minutes restriction or anything like that. So I have a little bit of exposure to both of them, really as a placeholder, because I want to have the flexibility to be able to swap my lineups later in the day.
Yeah, so it's, I think, worth, potentially trying to figure out ways to force in a good amount. I'm getting naturally, as I've talked about a lot here, I like Kelly Olynyk a lot normally as a Rocket. So I'm getting 22% of my lineups are going to have him just kind of in there in the hopes that I could find ways to shift around or maybe leave some money on the table. I'm getting a little bit less of KJ Martin and Christian Wood in my lineups too, but I think it's worth trying to have some exposure there. And I'll ask you real fast about Kyrie Thomas, because I don't know what to make of him. We're not giving him a good minutes projection right now. And to me, based on the popcorn machine box scores and watching a little bit of that game just to try to figure out what was going on, it seems like Kyrie Thomas is the backup point guard, but also plays other positions. And I'm not sure what to do, because Awesemo only has him in for 9 minutes right now. And that feels low, but Kyrie Thomas's price tag is up enough on DK that you really can't get there unless you're trying to get there deliberately.
Yeah, so here's the other issue also, is that, so in the last 3 games, Jayshawn Tate missed one of them. Obviously, Christian Wood's been out. Kelly Olynyk missed last game. So while I agree Kyrie Thomas is going to be in the rotation today, I don't think it's going to be enough minutes that makes me want to play him unless Olynyk and Wood are both out. As it stands right now, I have him playing 20 minutes, but that's assuming that Olynyk and Wood are both playing tonight.
Yeah, so definitely some news here to watch out for and hope that you can get right. But Houston, definitely a team that's difficult to unpack right now without knowing everything that we can about them. Let's keep going through, and I guess let's take some of these super chats so we can clear the deck a little bit. Soul Dope saying, "Sup, fellas, for FanDuel, what are your thoughts for center and who do you prefer?" And would you, let's talk about that part first, then we can answer the second part of his question. Greg, who do be your priority centers on FanDuel today?
Jared Allen by a pretty wide margin, and then Clint Capella is my second favorite center.
And then who would you prefer, Ingles and Wade or Powell and James Johnson? I presume also on FanDuel.
Let me scroll up to read the question, because it is hard to remember all the names off the top of my head. All right, I can't find it. Just could you read it to me one more time?
Ingles and Wade or Powell and James Johnson for FanDuel?
That's Ingles and Wade.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And he says, thanks. And let's get to 3,000 likes for the whole eyebrow. Look, you keep getting likes in. I agree. And Soul Dope, one of our regulars, knows that just keep hitting the like button here and good things will happen. So hit that like button. Opposite XO saying Sexton, Wade, Dotson, Allen. Is that too many Cavs for a DK single entry? I feel like I would still cap my Cavs at 3 personally, especially because you do have pretty high usage guys in the mix like Sexton. Like Sexton could easily gobble up all the possessions. But Greg, would you play 4 Cavs for a DK single entry?
Yes, I have some lineups with 4 Cavaliers. The other thing also is, don't forget so many of these guys are min price, and it doesn't take that much for them to get there. And it kind of enables some interesting lineup builds where if you have, Thomas, Dotson, Dean Wade all in the same lineup, you can kind of pay up for whoever you want. You can get Westbrook, Curry, Trae Young. Like you can get 2 or 3 stars in the lineup. So it's a lineup construction I don't mind. I would feel differently if these guys were even a little bit more expensive. If we had Thomas, Dotson, and Wade all priced at like 38 to 4,400 or something like that, I would feel differently than if they're 3,000, 32, and 3,400.
That's reasonable. I think that 4-man group though had Sexton and Allen, so you're paying up for like 2 guys who were mostly priced where they should be. I think like you could sort of argue it that Sexton's a little bit cheap, or Allen too on DraftKings, but like I agree with you. Like if you're playing Wade it might be tough for me to play Dotson and Thomas together, but I think if you're playing those 3, it's fine because those guys are cheap. But I think once you start throwing in Sexton and Allen who have like real price tags on them, that's where to me it gets a little bit dicier.
Yeah. And I have very limited amount of exposure to Colin Sexton today. So all the other guys are higher priorities, but just in the general question of how many Cavs am I willing to play in a lineup, I have no issue playing 4 Cavs together on DK.
All right. And some more super chats here. We got one from Chief Big Wave saying, how low in salary would you guys go on DK tonight? I am still keeping it at my usual 49.8 minimum. I feel like, you can go to 49.5, but for the most part, if you do your lineup study and dig through everything that you're supposed to, if you're trying to make this a process every day and, check out what the top players are doing, you're really not seeing a lot of lineups there, below 49.5. So I still think that'd be my cap, Greg. And do you feel any differently? Would you really lower that minimum salary?
No, I mean, I think the question might be what's the cheapest salary of any player I'm playing, and that's 3,000 Damian Dotson today. But if the question is in terms of amount of salary I've left on the table, I just sorted it. I don't have any lineups that are leaving more than 49.6 today.
All right, and another super chat here from Sunflower saying Neto and Sabonis or James Johnson and Curry for DK. For me, I think I would be going towards, I think it's James Johnson and Curry for me. But Greg, how do you feel? Neto and Sabonis or James Johnson and Curry?
James Johnson and Curry. Just a general note, does it surprise you that the spread is so tight for the Jazz Warriors game?
A little bit, but I mean, they're both playing for something, so I get why the spread is where it is because, Golden State's still sort of playing to keep at least everybody at bay in the playing game for the most part, and Utah still trying to hold on to the 1 seed, so I get it, and I think to me, it sort of screams that they're expecting an outlier Steph Curry day, which I think to the DFS field is not necessarily representing right now.
I think the Jazz are so much better that I'm surprised they're only favored by 2 points. So, I mean, obviously Donovan Mitchell being out and Mike Conley being out makes a massive difference, but even so, the Warriors are so reliant on Steph Curry that if he doesn't go out and score 40 points, they just aren't that competitive in a lot of games right now because he's their entire way of generating offense. So I think the spread should be a little bit wider. It was just something I generally thought interesting about the slate.
Darren Unger saying we missed his super chat. Oh, here it is. For FanDuel, Bledsoe and Keldon Johnson or Hachimura and Okoro. A lot of early for these either ors, but let's get this one in for FanDuel, Bledsoe and Keldon Johnson or Hachimura and Okoro.
Bledsoe and Keldon Johnson. Did you get exposure to Okoro today?
Let me see, because I still have to run my final crunch here, but
okay.
I got Okoro 11%, it looks like, on DK.
Yeah, I didn't, but I kind of thought that I thought he was a potential interesting pivot play. So I tried to bump up his projectional. I still didn't get to him though.
I agree. I think he's another guy. Like I talked about Broderick Thomas being sort of the direct pivot to Damian Dotson, but I think if you play neither Dotson nor Broderick Thomas, I think that Okoro maybe has one of those days that he starts to get his usage up, which does happen from time to time. I don't have the most, reliance or hope or sort of confidence that he's going to be able to do it. But for me, being a little bit above the field seemed right for Okoro. So yeah, I'm on the same page with you. People also noticing, I guess, my cat walking. Yeah, I do have a cat too. The cat's actually the oldest of my animals, and the dogs are in here too because my girlfriend's not here. So I'm chock full of animals right now that anybody who's asking in the chat, one guy in particular seems very curious. Her name is Nilla, and she was adopted when I was in college, and she was thrown out with her litter and brought home in a box of Nilla wafers. So that is why her name is Nilla. There you go.
Yeah, I have a pet rat.
Yeah, and Gordon, if you were watching the MLB strategy show, according to our usual prankster Kevin S, apparently Greg has a rat walking around his background, and we don't know who it is.
And I'm just scanning to see. I think those are all the super chats. I don't see any of them that we missed.
Yeah, Noah's saying that he had a super chat early in the show, didn't get read. Blame Jordan Klein if you want, because he's the one who's capturing all of them for me, because they are apparently flying hot and heavy so far. Let's go to the premium Slack and make sure we didn't miss any questions. And here real fast, Swanson79 saying thoughts on Wood and Olynyk on DK and a couple lineups for late swap just in case. Rule to not play together. I mentioned it, but I'm getting that naturally. I think that's a good move. I certainly wouldn't mind trying to go from Wood to Olynyk. I think that's a fine pivot for the Wood part of it. But, generally, I think trying to keep some roster spots and roster flexibility would be the move that I would want. So anything that supports that, I'm okay with. But any other thoughts on that, Greg, with just keeping Wood and Olynyk in some lineups, but I guess not played together?
Yeah, I said before, I like having the flexibility. It's just hard for me to say at this point who are the best plays on the Rockets when both of them are questionable to play. And where I think we've really run into an issue is if Olynyk and Wood both play without any kind of restriction, then I don't think either of them are good plays.
We got another question here in the premium Slack asking for your favorite small forward play on DK. And I think from my exposures, it's probably going to be Damian Dotson in terms of just his being a minimum salary guy. And besides that, I got more DeMar DeRozan than the field, and I guess Joe Ingles looks okay. But Greg, for your small forward exposure, I presume you're also team Dotson mostly.
Yeah, Dotson and nobody else close.
All right, so that's the premium Slack questions. If you guys have any other super chats, just feel free to throw them in, and we'll try to get there. I guess we have one more question in the Slack asking about Kabengele on DK. I feel like you answered that already, Greg, but one more time, what are your Kabengele thoughts?
I have a little bit of exposure to him as just a pivot off of the other more popular Cavs value plays, but I don't have that much difference in the field. I have 10% exposure to him right now, and in our latest ownership projection, he is at 9%. So I'm almost right even with the field there. And to me, I think that's reasonable. It's just a different Cavs guy to get exposure to for minimum salary so that I don't have all of the same guys in every single one of my lineups.
That is often an important part of DFS. It's just not having the same guys in every single lineup. We don't talk about that a lot in the shows, but boy, it can be as crucial as anything. The super chat, I guess, that we might have missed from Noah would have been, let's see, his question was FanDuel GPP, Neto and Najee Marshall or Dotson and Kyle or Rui. So Greg, you might just want to read that one in the chat from Noah DeCumos.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
It's a regular chat, not a super chat.
Oh, okay. All right. That would make it easier. It would also help if I was in the right Slack chat right now, which I have. I pulled up the wrong one.
It's in the YouTube chat.
Oh my God. Nice. All right. Can you just read it to me one more time?
Yeah. FanDuel GPP, Neto and Najee Marshall or Dotson and Kyle or Rui.
That would be Dotson and Rui Hachimura.
Let's talk about Legarian Bridgewater, one of our regulars. I got to take the super chat too. Thoughts on Ish Smith? How are you feeling about Legarian Bridgewater's question and about Ish Smith as well? A guy who I was deliberately earlier in the day trying to get away from. I think I'm going to land for Ish Smith to me around 10 to 15% ownership.
Yeah, he's in 5% of my lineups right now, so I'm underweight to the field. I like the Cavs values much better than Ish Smith. I still think there's the issue of that Neto is starting over him. So it's hard for me to expect him to play that many minutes. Not an outright fade for me, but I'm definitely lower on him than the field is.
Let's see. No other questions, it looks like, in the premium Slack. So let's jump to New Orleans for a little bit of conversation here, because I'm sure people are going to be tempted to be playing the bigs again with no Steven Adams. He was ruled out officially throughout the show, has been doubtful. So that's the expectation all day and all the content you'll be watching here on the channel. But for New Orleans, they are going to have Willy Hernangomez playing some amount of meaningful minutes. It does seem to something we talked about in the tip-off. It does seem like there's definitely an impetus to get Jackson Hayes in the mix, a guy who's clearly had more draft capital invested in him. I think not from this regime, though, so maybe that won't matter quite as much. But Jackson Hayes has been stealing run from Willie recently. Willie, I think, looks like a solid play, Greg. Jackson Hayes, I think, a cheaper play, looks like a better value, but I don't mind Willie as a tournament pivot. But how are you handling the bigs from New Orleans? And then we could talk about perennial MVP Eric Bledsoe after.
Yeah, I don't really like either of them. I didn't know what to do with the minutes, so I just split it 24-24 and said, hey, I think Hernangomez plays 24 minutes, and he's been priced up now. He's at 5,700. And then with Jackson Hayes playing 24 minutes and his price up to 4,500, that would make him in play on both slates, but not this one where we have so many value plays that are priced around the minimum on DraftKings. So I don't have exposure to Hernangomez or Hayes tonight.
Let's keep going through New Orleans, and let's talk about Eric Bledsoe, because people will be, if they're checking the box scores the last couple games, Bledsoe's usage has been up. That's been the case all year long too, where he's had about a 22.5% usage rate in court time without Brandon Ingram and without Zion Williamson. And Bledsoe, I think, we talked about it again earlier on the tip off. So if you were paying attention to that, sorry for repeating things. I try to keep it different when we can. But Bledsoe and Rozier going head to head, harkening back to their days in the playoffs of Rozier hounding Bledsoe taking that very personally. And I think that was the case here. So you can maybe spin a little narrative for yesterday. But Greg, Bledsoe's been getting usage, and I think the price tag still offers some upside. So I'm going to be a little bit above the field on Bledsoe, not going crazy on him today. But how are you handling Bledsoe, given you've had some affinity for him? And if you're ever going to like Eric Bledsoe, this is the time to do it.
It is not this time for me, at least not on DraftKings, because I think that the price tag to me is a little bit too cheap. Except the issue with this particular slate is while he is a little bit too cheap, there's a lot of players who are a lot too cheap. So once again, a lot of my lineups are stars and scrubs. And given that he's at 5,900 on DraftKings, it's kind of a thin play to me. I think there's better guys to get to. Fanduel is a little bit different where he's 5,700, so a little bit cheaper, but then also we have to roster 2 shooting guards. So to me, Bledsoe is more of a viable play on Fanduel than DraftKings. So I have about half the exposure that the field has.
Okay. I'm getting a little bit more Bledsoe than I would personally like on DraftKings, getting him at 16%. But to me, that's close enough to the field. Field projected to be around 10, 11% on DK. So I'll be a little bit above it. I have no issue being a little bit above it. Certainly not one that I'm dying to get in there, but I think Bledsoe has a ceiling. And even ignoring whatever narrative things, I think it's been proven enough throughout the season that he's going to be there. Rest of the Pelicans, James Johnson still in play for you. I'm going to assume here at the price tag that's coming up. Are you feeling anything for Lonzo, I guess, is a contrarian play amongst the Pelicans, the one guy who has not shown an upside with these guys out? Does anybody stand out meaningfully for you?
No. If Lonzo was a little bit cheaper, but the issue is, all right, so if you want to play Lonzo on FanDuel, he's 7,900 and he is picking up 10% ownership. So while that isn't nothing, it's still, to me, it's a little bit high when he's only $500 less expensive than Trae Young. Damian Lillard is 9,500 on FanDuel. So to me, I think that there's much better plays to get to than Lonzo. And while it is true that the ownership is maybe a little bit low when you consider all the guys who are out for him, he's also expensive, right? So at 8,000 on DraftKings, he's still picking up right around 10% ownership. And then, like I said, same goes for FanDuel. And there's just a lot of really strong point guard options. So to me, there's other guys I'd rather get to. Lonzo isn't in my player pool.
And we got another super chat here from Rio G. It looks like favorite center on FanDuel and favorite power forward besides Wade. And he says, thanks for all you guys do. Been killing it. So good job by you, Rio, if you're doing a good job in your tournaments. But who's your favorite center on FanDuel? I think you said it earlier that it was Jared Allen, but is that holding true?
Yeah, Jared Allen at center and then Jaren Jackson Jr. at power forward. So Triple J, actually one of my favorite young players in the league, especially from a fantasy standpoint going forward, just because he has so much versatility. He's able to do everything. It's just really been an issue this year. He had this knee surgery in the offseason, and the team gave out no information on it at all. So there was just this expectation that, all right, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to miss the first month, 2 months of the season, then he'll be good to go. And then he just never returned. They gave out no information. It kind of left you wondering, like, all right, what's going on with Jaren Jackson Jr.? Then they finally announced that it was some sort of meniscus repair that was a little bit more involved than what was originally expected. I'm not a doctor, so I didn't really understand all that. But here's what's important that I do know. Jaren Jackson Jr. is starting now for the Memphis Grizzlies, and we've seen his playing time slowly start to trend upward. So 26 minutes for him last game. That was a season high. 36 DraftKings points. That was a season high for him. And then also considering that because the defensive stats, he's more of a favorite play on FanDuel than DraftKings. I think that he's a really strong play on FanDuel.
How are you approaching him on DraftKings? Because he's in my player pool. I'm going to get a little bit of him. It does seem like he's underowned according to the Boom Bust tool. A 22% chance of being in the optimal on DraftKings too. I'm just curious your thoughts there. And did you get a good amount of Jaren Jackson on DraftKings as well?
I'm a little bit overweight to the field on him. Not to the point where he's one of my most rostered players or anything like that, but I have him in about a quarter of my lineups right now at the price point that he is at right now. I still think that there's upside in him, just given on what we saw from him last year, where he scored over a fantasy point per minute. And then, like I said, he started last game, scored 36 DraftKings points in only 26 minutes. Also consider his age, and you have to think that he's going to get better going forward. The real concern I have here is actually just as he get into foul trouble, because that's something that hasn't been too major of an issue this season, but it has been in the past. But I think if we could start to see the minutes continue to trend upward, we're probably looking at like 28 to 30 minutes tonight for Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's worth playing on DraftKings, more of an obvious play, I would say, on FanDuel, just because of what Greg mentioned with the positionality and also the defensive stats, but certainly capable of heating up. And worth pointing out too, last game, he lost a few minutes because he was in foul, as he's always going to be in foul trouble. So maybe it's just part of accepting who he is as a human being, but definitely could get more run here if the game stays close and he can keep himself clean in terms of fouls. Any other team that we haven't hit on? I feel like we haven't touched on Milwaukee, San Antonio very much. Any team that we haven't hit on that you just want to jump to make sure we cover before the slate locks?
Yeah, I mean, those teams you mentioned there, I'm rostering, I'm rostering Steph Curry. I'm overweight to the field. I'm overweight to the field on Giannis Antetokounmpo on DraftKings. The reason being, there's unlimited value, and if I'm overweight to the field on the value plays like Damian Dotson, that opens up extra salary for me. So it just makes sense that if I'm overweight to the field on Dotson, therefore I'm going to be overweight to the field on guys like Giannis and Curry as well.
Yeah, I am a little bit more exposed to Colin Sexton than I would have thought earlier. I'm going to be a little bit over 25% ownership for him on DK, and it looks like he's projected for under 20%. And I'm also getting a good amount of Damian Lillard, which I think is just because of what you were talking about, the salary and being able to spend pretty much wherever you want. I think I'm getting Lillard in a lot of lineups without Westbrook, and I think I'd prefer Steph Curry as the pivot, but if the price works for Lillard and gets him in, I feel like Lillard and McCollum are two guys that I don't mind on the DK slate just because they do have some degree of upside going against Houston, and really any of them could be the initiator of whatever blowout Houston's going to endure today.
Yeah, my concern there is just that a game with a 14.5-point spread, that it just ends up being not competitive and the starters don't play in the fourth quarter. So I have Dame exposure, but I much prefer both Curry and Giannis tonight.
All right, we answered Mr. Moneybags' question about Jaren Jackson Jr. We do have some love for him tonight on DK, but not going to be quite as heavy as on FanDuel. Anderson and Rui on FanDuel. Another question here. Do you have a lean between those two? I would go Rui's way if I had the choice.
Yeah, it's Rui. I mean, he played 35 minutes last game. If we look at his numbers for the season, I said it earlier, but a 23.4% usage rate. He scores 31.34 DraftKings points per 36 minutes. When Beal's off the court, just the one question I have here is they've been so goofy with his minutes where it kind of, is all over the place with Rui. So I'm a little bit overweight to the field on him today, but I don't have a ton of confidence in it. It's just one that the numbers suggest that he should be a little bit more expensive and that he should see a significant amount of usage with Beal off the court. Now I just hope they don't do anything, weird and Scotty Brooks comes out and plays him, 28 or 30 minutes. I hope he's, to like full minutes allotment.
Office Ninja asking George Niang or Danilo Gallinari or KJ Martin Jr. for DK. My lean between those guys would be KJ Martin Jr. I think he's an okay play now and would get a lot better if you get one of Wood or Olynyk out.
Yeah, I can't. If Wood and Olynyk both play, though, I can't get to KJ Martin personally at his current price point. So I would say the other side. But that would change if Wood and or Olynyk are out.
Yeah, right now, Martin to me looks like an okay enough play, and it's something that I've picked up from our pal Eric Lindquist, who people can follow on Twitter to keep up with his trials and tribulations at Eric Lindquist, including the shaving of his eyebrows that'll be coming tomorrow. But I think KJ Martin to me looks good now, would look a lot better if you get one of those guys out. So I don't mind just keeping him in as a placeholder now. Sabonis and actually no, here's a question.
By the way, we have some super chats here also.
Well, let's get the Slack first because we got it. We'll jump back to them. Let's speed around these. So only soundbite answers. Scoops asking, probably wouldn't want to play Ish Smith and Westbrook together, or do you not care given Ish's price?
Well, I have a few Ish Smith lineups and I have Russell Westbrook in all my lineups. So by default, any lineup I have with Ish Smith is Russell Westbrook in it.
We also got this one here: Sabonis and Bazemore or Giannis and Keldon for a FanDuel single entry.
Giannis and Keldon.
All right. You want to go to the super chats if you have them in front of you?
Yeah. So question here from Terrence Little: Russell Westbrook under 67 fantasy points. I don't think he needs 67 fantasy points to be optimal tonight, but that is an under for me.
Yeah, I would take the under too. I mean, I've projected for 61. That's around where Awesemo has him too. I feel like that to me is the median level, and obviously him being over or under that, that's all in the range of outcomes that we talk about. I got one more super chat here from Jordan from Soldope here, asking for another 3v3 for FanDuel, and he apologized too, which we appreciate here because 3v3s drive us insane. Ingles, Wade, and Capella, or Powell, Jaren Jackson, and Allen. I don't like the Powell part, but I do like the Jaren Jackson and the Allen part. So I think I'd go Powell, Jaren Jackson, and Allen. But Greg, between those two, Ingles, Wade, Capella, Powell, Jaren Jackson, Allen, which way do you want to go?
Powell, Jaren Jackson, and Allen. I can't wait for the day, though, where just somebody goes out and gives us like an 8v8 question where it's just, hey, here are the two lineups I'm considering between.
I would certainly respect that. Pelicans starters out. JJ starting. What is JJ? Who's JJ?
Redick?
Oh, James Johnson.
No. Oh, no, never mind. Yeah, I was going to say he's not on the team anymore.
He came back to the Pelicans after trashing them in the media just because he wanted to start one more time.
Hey, well, he trashed the. He didn't trash the Mavericks, but he didn't want to go to the Mavericks, and he's still playing for them.
That's true. The Pelicans starting Ball, Bledsoe, Marshall, James Johnson, and Hernan Gomez. So no surprise Jackson Hayes starts, but keep in mind those guys are going to be sharing a good amount of minutes, and Hernan Gomez seems to be the lower priority, but still in the mix for sure. Let's see. The Hawks are starting Young, Herter, Bogdanovich, Collins, Capella. I don't think there's anything surprising to that one. Let's see. Any other questions in the YouTube chat? We got all the super chats. Let's see. I'm seeing if there's a good free YouTube question we can answer here. Here's one. Brandon asking LeVert, McCollum, or Sexton. Which one would you prefer there? I have to say I got the most Sexton exposure today.
Of those guys, it would be LeVert for me. He's been somebody who I wish I got to more of him today. And it's kind of funny to say because I control my own ownership. But ultimately, he was somebody I just found it harder to get to. I've really been trying to force myself to more Karis LeVert over the last few slates whenever Brogdon is ruled out, just because the Pacers have showed no hesitation to play in big minutes, especially considering how important these games are at this point of the year. We've seen now the last 4 games, other than a game that was blowout against the Kings, 38 minutes, 41 minutes, and 41 minutes for Karis LeVert in the 3 competitive games. And also his role in the offense is massive with no Malcolm Brogdon right now. We're seeing a usage rate of right around 30%. Actually, his usage rate over the last 2 weeks is at 32.3%. And then also the assist rate is huge also. It just becomes a point where Karis LeVert is priced. I still ultimately would prefer to get to guys, like Westbrook, Giannis, and Curry, and I had the flexibility to be able to get up to those guys on this slate. But one of the guys who I'm really concerned about just having a massive game at low ownership and me not having enough of, it's Karis LeVert.
That's how I feel about Sabonis too. I feel like the median outcome of these guys is not quite there. And I tried to give Sabonis 50% as my exposure cap and only got to him in 11% of lineups. So that scares me. I'm under on LeVert too, or lower on LeVert than I would like to be. And I agree. I think, the one thing you can point to is that they are playing Cleveland, who plays slow. And I think that's what's sort of spooking the numbers down for me a little bit away, even though Sabonis and LeVert have been so great recently. But I think it's tough to not be with the field on Sabonis and LeVert. And it looks like I'll be at about half the field on DraftKings for LeVert, 15%, Sabonis, 17%. And it wouldn't shock me if it's higher than that too.
Yeah. To me, it's just those numbers. Also, there have been recent slates where we've gotten not Sabonis. Sabonis has been super popular, but there's been a bunch of LeVert slates lately where it's been, like 4 or 5% Karis LeVert. And I've aggressively pushed to try to get higher and just bumped up whatever projection I have for him, just because I think the upside is so substantial at this point of the season where we're seeing, teams that are going for playoff spots, core players are seeing uptick in usage and uptick in minutes. But it was just, if Karis LeVert, if his ownership is a little higher, a little lower, I just feel like the field is kind of there already. But I'm definitely afraid of him just having a monster game again.
All right, and we are locked. So any final thoughts, whether it be about the NBA DFS slate? Obviously, people should be paying attention to that Rockets news in particular. That is a crucial one that we've talked about throughout the show that you just need to be ready to pivot around for. But any other thoughts for you, Greg, before we call it quits?
Go follow at Eric Lindquist on Twitter. Because, we got a guy here. He's given up. He might have ruined his relationship over something that most people aren't even going to be aware of on the internet. So, come on, go follow the guy.
Yeah, he did. We passed that 1,500 likes threshold, actually over 1,600. So maybe he'll shave some other bits for the shot. I don't know what else he has to offer up, but make sure to tune into our shows tomorrow because you'll see the fallout of all this, the tip off. Also, we'll have Eric paying off a bet to Greg. So lots of Eric paying off bets tomorrow, and he is not going to be able to welsh on any of them because we would never let him live it down. We are men and women of honor here on the Awesemo YouTube channel, so we appreciate it. Make sure to follow at G Ehrenberg DFS, follow at Chris Spags, follow at Awesemo_com, and follow at Eric Lindquist, our friend who's really giving us content left and right. And make sure you're paying attention to our news at Awesemo NBA. If you're not, if you're not on the premium Slack, that is another way to get all the news gods alerts. So pay attention today. Going to be a crucial slate to do that. We appreciate all of you guys for being here. Hit that like button one more time before you go. We'll see you guys again soon. So enjoy your nights. Good luck. I don't even have enough time to